Today, I'm going to be taking you through the typical process I'd use when working with a client on their website. Now for brevity, the process that I'm going to show you is stripped down to the key skills that you need to get under your belt. Now I'll be taking you from setting up scalable cloud hosting with CloudWays, who've kindly sponsored this video, right the way through the key areas of using Elementor Pro, WooCommerce, and later we'll be delving into advanced custom fields and custom post type UI to create some custom sections to list exhibitions and art classes. Now if you're ready to go behind the scenes and see some of the key tools and techniques that I use when developing client sites, join me as we get stuck in. So in this first section, we're going to be setting up our hosting. Now we're going to be using CloudWays like I've already mentioned, and setting up a cloud-based server, a cloud-based host, is a little different to what you may be used to if you've used normal hosting, things like SiteGround or things along those lines. But don't worry, there's nothing complex about this, it just works slightly differently. Now I'm going to cover the basics in this video, but if you want to learn a lot more about using CloudWays, I've already created 3 dedicated videos on the whole process of setting up your account, configuring things, setting up all the different things you want, including backups, migration, and all those really cool things. I'll put a link in the description below so you can check those out if you want to get up to speed on exactly how to get the most out of CloudWays. That being said, let's take a look at setting things up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say start a free trial. This will allow us to test things out, make sure we're 100% happy with it, and then we can move on to paying for this as we normally would. So you can set this account up in a couple of different ways. We can go through and set up using LinkedIn, we can use GitHub, or we can use Google, or we can just use an email address and our name and password and so on. And that's exactly what we are going to do in this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my name, and we'll just put in my surname, and then we can go through and set everything up for email and password. So I'll do that quickly. Now when we put those details in, we can just fill out the rest of the info that's required. So I'm going to say I'm a freelance web designer. My monthly hosting spending is, and we're going to put, the low figure in there for this particular example. It doesn't really matter too much. If you've got a promo code, you can drop that in there. I'm going to say we'll agree to the CloudWays terms and conditions. As always, make sure you read through these and the privacy policy to ensure you're happy with anything that you're signing your name away to. Once we've done that, we're going to click on Start Free. That will then take us through and set everything up in the next stage. So you can see now, we've got welcome to CloudWays. We're really excited to have you on board. It is that simple to sign up for an account. You couldn't get it simpler than that really, could you? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is tell it how we want to use this server. So like I say, this is where things differ from something like SiteGround. So welcome to CloudWays. It gives you some information about what you're going to get. We'll say start now. Now before we can complete this stage, we need to do one important thing, and that's confirm the email address that we've associated with this account. So what you need to do is wait for that email to come in. Once that's come in, click on Activate Account. Once you've activated your account, you're then going to be in a position where you can set up your server. Now don't be put off or daunted by the fact it says set up a server. It sounds way more complicated than it actually is. We just need to configure some very, very basic things, and then we're good to go. So let's forget about this top section where it's got application and server details. We'll come back to that in a moment. What we're interested in are these 5 sections underneath: DigitalOcean, Linode, etc., etc. This is the location or the cloud servers you're going to be using. So effectively, all we're doing is using CloudWays to be an intermediary between us and the server, the cloud server. So this gives us a nice simple way of setting things up. Now, DigitalOcean is the most cost-effective option. You can see, based upon this basic parameters we've got at the moment with the default settings, it's going to cost us between about 3 cents an hourly rate and then about $22 a month. If we choose something like Linode, you can see that's a little more expensive. Vultr, a little bit cheaper than the Linode option. AWS, a lot more expensive because the Amazon servers are a slightly higher grade. So when you move up and you want to get more options available, maybe AWS is going to be a better option for you if you have a lot more resources required for your site. Then you've got the Google Cloud Platform, which you can see is a little bit cheaper than AWS. But we're going to keep this down to the DigitalOcean option. Next up, we've got the server size. In other words, how much space do we want to use on it? How much is the server going to require? You can see when we hover over this little dot, it's going to give us 2 gigabytes of RAM, 50 gigabytes of SSD storage, so it's already going to be super quick, 2 terabytes of transfer, and a 1-core processor. What we're going to do though is we're going to drop that down to the 1 gigabyte option. It's a little bit less in the storage and so on, but the core of the processor is still 1 core, it's just a little bit less RAM. Now, for starting off, this should be more than enough unless you are going to be doing something with a ton of traffic or very complex sites. But the beauty of using CloudWays and using it this way is that we can simply log into our account and we can change any of the server setting sizes, so we can scale this in a super simple fashion where we don't need to go and rely upon anybody else to scale it. Beauty of this is you could easily, if you know you're putting out, for example, a range of advertising and you think you're going to get a big spike in traffic, you could come in, you could ramp this up to give you more overhead, and then when you've had that spike of traffic, things go back to normal, then you can drop your resources down and reduce your payment. So that flexibility is an incredibly useful thing. Anyway, with that out of the way, we leave it at 1 gigabyte. You can see that's going to cost us roughly $10 a month. Next thing is the server location. So what you need to do is make sure you choose the server location that's nearest to you or nearest to where your main audience is going to be. So if you know that the majority of your audience are based in the US and you are based in the UK like I am, it would make more sense to choose a US-based server location, because then they're going to get a much quicker sort of result, much quicker load times on the site, going to be much more beneficial to you. So just bear that in mind. It's not a case of choosing the one that's nearest to you, choose the one that's nearest to your audience. I'm going to leave this as London because my audience for this example is going to be more UK-based. Then we can come through and we can choose the application and server details. Now realistically, the application is what software do we want to pre-install in there, like WordPress or Joomla or something. The application is just the name you're going to give it. The server name is just something that means something to you, and the project is just a way of grouping all of your applications together. Not complicated. So let's just start this off. Your application is going to be art site, because that's what we're going to be creating. The server, we're just going to call this WPTuts art. And the project, well, we can give this a name as well. So we're going to call this clients, for example. Doesn't really matter too much. Now, underneath the WordPress application we want to install, you can see if we click and open that up, we've got a ton of different options. Obviously, like I say, we're going to be working with WordPress, but we have a couple of options there as well. We can install the normal version of WordPress 5.3, which is the current version. We can install it with the current version of WooCommerce. We can set up a multi-site option, or we can choose to install a clean copy of WordPress with no CloudWays optimization. Now, this basically means that any plugins that are used for optimization that are automatically installed won't be installed. Up to you which way you want to go about this. Choose the option that works best for you. I'm going to choose the version 5.3 with no optimization because I like to have control over that myself. So I'm going to click on that, and then we've done everything. So like I say, it wasn't complicated. It's very, very simple and straightforward. We've now configured everything. We're going to hit launch now, and that's going to go ahead and create our server, set up our first application, and everything else we need to do. And there we go. There's our application and server all set up. It's going to take a few minutes to complete everything. So as like I say, with everything to do with this, because they are an intermediary, you're going to have it slightly different where it takes a little bit of time to talk to the cloud service, set things up, and then come back. So I'm just going to pause here and we'll come back once we've got everything set up, and then we'll take a look at the next option. So now that everything is completed, let me give you just a very quick run around exactly how to use this. So we've got servers and we've got applications. Servers, because you could have multiple servers set up and associated with your account, are where all of your applications reside. So in other words, a server can have multiple websites associated with it, and websites are basically referred to as applications in CloudWays speak. So if we take a look at that, you can see there's our server. It gives us the information. It's the WPTuts art server. 1 gigabyte, which is what we set up, the IP address for it, the location of the server, and the date it was created. On the right hand side, we can see we've got the number of applications installed on the server, and then we've got the projects associated with this server. If we click on the little 3 dots to the right hand side, we can do things like stop, restart, delete, add an application, or if we had multiple servers, we could clone the server to get an identical copy of it. We can switch over to applications by using this option at the top, and that'll show us any of the websites or applications that are associated with the server. So you can see that we've been told we've not created any projects yet. Creating projects are very easy and completely optional. And like I say, it's just a way of grouping things together. If we click on the art site, we can click and go in and take a look at all of the details for that particular application. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got all the different options like access details, monitoring, domain management, etc., etc., etc. We've then got the application URL, which is a temporary URL that's associated with your account. And when you're ready, you can then actually associate the domain that you want to use with your account. And then it'll, after a little bit of time, it'll migrate over and do everything it needs to do. And I've covered that in its own video which, like I say, are the videos to do with working with CloudWays. So I'll use that, link that in the description so you can see how you do that. It's a little bit beyond what I want to cover in this. So we've got the application URL, which is the site. And if we click to open that up, you'll see we now have just a basic clean install of WordPress. At the top, you can see that's the full URL to it. If we come back in, you can see we can set up SSH and SFTP if we want to use an FTP client to get in there. We don't need to do that. The admin panel, so this will give you the URL to that and the username and the password, which obviously you'd want to change afterwards. Then there's the database information, so if you needed that for anything, you could take a look at using that. We can also apply a free SSL certificate to this account. So once you've mapped your domain to it, I would recommend that you use this SSL management, come in and set up a free account, or a free SSL, I should say, which, like I say, all that information on how to do all of these different things will be in that playlist down below. So make sure you take a look at those. And we've also got things like backup and restore, so we can make sure we can back up before we do things. This will go through and tell us any backup information we've got, any backups we created and so on. So that may take a couple of moments to refresh. Then we've also got migration tools, application settings, so you can come in and you can just configure this any way you want. So this gives you tons and tons of options on how to set things up. Like I say, at its bare minimum, we've done everything we need to realistically have a site set up and ready to start working. So all we need to do, come back to our access details, and we'll simply click to go over to our login, and then we can come back into here, and we'll just click to copy our login details, and we'll just paste those in there, and we'll come back in, and we'll just click to copy the password, and do the same, paste that in there, we'll say remember me, and click login. And that's basically everything set up now for our demo site, ready to start building things. Now we've got WordPress installed, we need to do a little bit of housework before we start installing all the plugins and the tools and the themes and things we need to start working on. So first of all, let's take a look at what we need to get rid of. So first things first, let's set up the permalinks to make sure that we've got nice URLs throughout the entire site. What we need to do is simply come into the settings option, come down to permalinks, and from there, we're just going to set this to be post name. Hit save changes. That's that side of things done. Next up, we're going to come into the post section. We're going to go to all posts and we're going to get rid of anything that's inside here. So we're just going to trash that. And the same way with the page, you're going to go to all pages and we're just going to select these two and we're going to just send those to the trash. So we have nothing in there. Next up, we're going to appearance and themes. We don't need all these themes. We need one in here at the moment until we install the theme we want to work with. But for now, let's get rid of all these other ones. No point in keeping things that you don't have any use for on your site. They're just going to end up taking up space for no particular reason. So get shot of them, clean things up, start off with a nice clean slate. Okay, so we'll leave this one in there for now. We come into the plugin section, check any install plugins and see what's in there. Now normally when you install WordPress, you're going to have these two, Akismet Anti-Spam and Hello Dolly. Again, we're going to just bin those off. So we're just going to delete those. We'll apply that. Okay, I'm going to deactivate Breeze. Now, Breeze is basically just a caching plugin that's part of CloudWays. When you choose to set up your application in CloudWays, you can choose to have a completely clean install, and that would mean that Breeze wouldn't be installed. It's up to you if you want to use this, if you're using CloudWays. For now, I'm going to deactivate because I don't want any caching plugins going to be active while I'm working on the site, because that can just cause mayhem when you're trying to check updates and then things don't show up because of that caching plugin. Okay, so we've now cleared all the junk out that we don't need. The next thing we need to do is start adding the things that we do need. First of all, let's come into appearance and themes, and we're going to add a new theme in. Now, because we're going to be using Elementor Pro, we're going to be using the Hello theme. Now, this is just a bare bones theme that allows us to keep WordPress happy, but we can create our own pages, our own layouts, and all those kinds of things directly inside Elementor without worrying too much about the actual plugin itself, or sorry, about the theme itself. So let's just search for Hello. Once we've done that, there's the Hello theme. We're going to install that. Now, if you're going to make any changes to the actual theme itself, I'd also recommend downloading and installing the Hello Child theme. However, for this tutorial, we're not going to be making any changes to that. So we're going to activate this. And then what we can do is we can simply come into the theme option for 2020 and we'll just go into theme and we'll delete that one. So we end up with just the theme we want to use. Now next step is going to ask us to install Elementor because this theme is meant to work with Elementor. So for ease, we'll just say install that. We'll let that go ahead and install and then we'll take a look at what other plugins we need. So we'll activate Elementor. And we'll just come back then into our plugins section and we're going to install a couple more. So I don't particularly like working with Gutenberg. It's entirely up to you if you want to work with it. But because we're just going to be working with WordPress itself and we're going to be using Elementor, it doesn't really matter, but you can, if you want to, install the classic editor. I just prefer that over Gutenberg, but that's a personal preference. Next up, we're going to add WooCommerce. We're going to say add new, and we're just going to search for WooCommerce, and then we'll just download that. Now, I'm not going to worry about activating it just yet because I don't want to go through the process of setting all that up. I just want to keep this really simple, set up the things that we need, and then we can take a look at it. Now, I'm going to keep this fairly streamlined because I don't want to go through the whole process of showing you how to install SEO plugins because, let's be honest, there's quite a few different options, and I'm sure you've got your own personal preference. For me, if you were going to be using one and you didn't want to pay for it, I would recommend taking a look at Rank Math or the free version of SEO Press. If you wanted to look at a paid option, I would look at SEO Press Pro. I certainly wouldn't take a look at installing Yoast because they want to charge you for everything. And there's been some various different things that I don't necessarily think makes it the best SEO plugin on the market. With that being said, we won't worry about that. We do need to go and get Elementor Pro. Now, Elementor Pro is something you have to pay for. So I'm going to download that, install it, and then activate it. So we've got that activated on the site, ready for start using it. Okay, so there's our plugins. We've got everything installed and we're now ready to move on to the next stage, which is going through and setting up some of the basic theme styles we want to use. Now, the theme styles is basically a way of setting up global options that's part of Elementor, and it just makes the whole process of updating things like fonts, colors, and so on way easier. Again, I've got a dedicated tutorial on this, which I'll put a link in the description if you want to take a look at this in a lot more detail. We're going to go through it quite quickly just to sort of show how you set some things up so you can see how much of a time saver this particular option actually is. So let's take a look at setting these theme styles up. What we're going to do is we're going to come in and set up some settings first that we need to do inside Elementor to make sure this works. So we're going to come into Elementor and settings, and from there we have disable default colors and disable default fonts. Going to check both of those and we're going to hit save changes. Now, even though we're using the Hello theme, which is a pretty bare bones theme, if we don't disable this, we'll tend to find we will get some errors when we try to create a theme style. So all you need to do, set that on there and you are then good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to just create a basic theme style setup that we're going to use a template for. Now, to make this process much easier, I've created a template which you can download from the link in the description below that simply has all the key elements, your headings 1 through 6, your body text, all those kinds of things you can set up currently through the style kits or the theme styles. So it gives you one page, you can just set everything up, make sure it looks the way you want, and then you can just delete that template if you want to. So we're going to use that as the basis. So we're going to come in, first of all, we're going to come in and add a new page, and we're just going to call this, just close this down. We're just going to add this, it's going to be a demo page. So it doesn't really matter, we're just going to call this theme style test. We'll just publish that page and we'll set that to be private, so only logged in people can see it. We're going to delete it later anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. So we've done that, we're now going to edit with Elementor. Once we've done that, we now need to go in and just upload the template file. So let's open up the template option. And from there, we're going to come into My Templates, and you can see we've got no templates at the moment. So what we can do is we can just install one of them ourselves. So we're going to say Import Template, and I click on that, and then we're just simply going to drag and drop this file in for us. And there we go, Theme Style Preview. Like I say, this is freely available to you. There's nothing special about this. It's literally just some text boxes and bits and pieces. So let's insert that. We'll say yes to that. And you can see, all it really does is drop in some basic placeholder pieces of text, information, and so on. All the things we can style. Now, to get to our theme styles option, we need to go over into the little hamburger menu in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to come down to theme styles. I'm going to click to open that up, and that will now give us the theme styles panel. Now, if you hadn't set those options that I just shown you inside the settings panel for Elementor, you'd have a message on here telling you that you may have a problem if you don't set those things up. So that just alleviates that problem. Okay. I'm not, like I say, not going to go into too much detail about all this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got these different sections which we can customize and set up the rules for. We can override those on a widget level if we want to, but this is kind of your global styling for these various different parts. We've created all those different parts inside this page on the right-hand side. So now if we do something like come into the background and click on there and change the background color to red, for example, you can see now red will be the background color for every single page we create. So we can globally assign those different elements. Let's just clear that. And let's just close that down. We'll leave that as it is. We're not going to touch the background on there. More importantly, we've got things like typography. So inside here, we can now set the body text. We can also set the link text for the normal and the hover, and also all the H1 through 6. All of your headings can be styled inside here. So we're going to start off with our body text. So let's set our color first of all. We're going to set it to this nice gray color, and then we're going to just choose our typography. So we're going to click, and we're going to open our typography options up. So the first thing we're going to do is search for the font we want, which is Open Sans. You can see that now changes everything, including your headings, because the body is kind of the global sort of text styling, and then we can override that on a heading level and so on afterwards. So once we've done that, next thing we're going to do is set the size of the font that we want to work with. So we're going to set this to be 16 pixels, and then we're going to come into the weight. We're going to set this to be 300, and that looks pretty good. All we need to do then is set the line height. I'm going to set the line height in this example to 30 pixels. Now it's up to you what values you want to work with. You can work with pixels, you can work with Ms, Rems, or VW, whatever you think is the better option. For simplicity, I'm going to stick to pixels because a lot of people will still be using that. Is it the best option? Not necessarily, but for now, it's okay to stay with that. So that's the first part done. Now we can go through, we'll worry about the links a little later. Next thing we need to do now is go through and set our different headings up. So what are we going to do for that? We're going to come down to H1 first of all, and we're going to just choose a slightly darker grey. And you can see H1 now, which is the first one here, gets a little darker. Once we've done that, we can then come in and edit the typography for it. So we're going to click, scroll up a little bit. We're going to change the font this time, and we're going to have a corresponding font type. So we're going to use Mooly for this. So it's going to be a complementary font style. Now it's up to you how you want to style things from there. We're going to set the size of this to, let's go for something like 80, well, let's go for something like 45 pixels. That looks okay. Maybe a little bit larger. Let's go for 50. There we go. That gives us a nice size heading. And you can see that our title at the top is also being increased the same size because that's using the H1 tag. Weight, again, we can set this to whatever we want. So if we want to create a nice thin heading, we could do that. If we want to set something a little thicker, we could do that. Up to us what we want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be, let's go for something like 300 again. That looks quite nice. That's a nice sort of compromise. Now, the nice thing with this is that we can set this on a widget level. So when we have different sections on our site that we think we want to make these stand out, like the hero section at the top on our homepage, we obviously want that to be much larger. So we can override what we set inside here with using the widget level settings. And again, like I say, we'll take a look at that when we create that section. So now all I need to do is go through all these different headings, setting all the different values up inside there. We're not going to bore you with that. I'll come back to that a little later before we move on. So next up, we've got the buttons option. If we click to open that up, you can see I've got a couple of buttons on the screen in front of me. So now we can go through and set the styling we want on any of our buttons. We've got the normal and we've got the hover state, so we can control exactly what each of those states is going to look like. And again, you can set these on a widget level if you want to override anything yourself when you're creating things. So you have a lot of control, a lot of functionality over how all these different things work. So first of all, let's change the typography, and we're going to go from default and we're going to set this to be Mooly, just so we can keep in line with our headings. We're going to set this to be something like, we'll try 16 pixels, see what that looks like. Yeah, actually, let's go a little bit larger. Let's go up to something like 18. That looks good. We're going to set this to be 400, so it's a little, maybe 500. You see, not all fonts will support all of the different weight values. Some fonts will have all of them, some will have fewer. So you may see no real changes when you jump between some of the values on there. So just bear that in mind. Transform, we're going to set this to be uppercase. You can see now that gives us a much larger. Actually, I think 18 is probably a bit too big. Let's go to 16. There we go. So anything else you want to set, you can set that inside there. We're going to start off, first of all, with the normal. So this is the normal state that you'll see the button in. So first of all, we're going to set the text color. We're going to set that to be dark gray. Background color, we're going to set to be white. And once we come into that, we're then going to come down and we're going to choose to put in a drop shadow. So we're going to click on box shadow, and you can see that now shows us our shadow. We're just going to make this blur a little larger, and we're going to set this to be a lot more subtle by dropping down the opacity. So it just gives us a sense of the button being a little dimensional. Okay, so we can set border radius and things. So we can set the border radius to be 0. The padding, we can control that as well. So this won't affect anything that's sort of set to be full width, like the send button there. But the click here, you can see that will change accordingly. So let's just say we'll unlink these values, and we're going to set something like, try 10, not 100, 10 at the top, 10 at the bottom, and then we'll do something like 50, not 500, 50 for the left and right. Actually, let's go a little bigger on the top and bottom. Let's try something like 50 and see what that looks like. That's a little better. Okay, so we've now styled those. I'm going to come back and just tweak a little bit with the box shadow, just make it a little darker because it looks a little too subtle. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the button effect. We need to do something with the hover effect. So we can click on there and you can see we can now change anything we want. So if we want to change the text color on hover, we could do that. So let's just say we'll change that to be a lighter gray, or maybe actually let's go black. See what that looks like. You can see it gives a subtle kind of thing. What we can also do is adjust the box shadow on this. So we could say we'll keep all the values, but we'll make the box shadow just a little darker. So you see now when you go over, you get this effect. I think that's a little too dark. So let's just drop that down. There we go. So we now get a subtle hover effect. You know, you can set this to any way that you want to. So that's basically all that you're doing. So now you can repeat the same kinds of things for your form fields, for your images, and so on. So all the values you set inside here will then become the default global values. And if you wanted to make changes to those afterwards, you can simply come back into the theme style section, tweak and adjust. And if you want to override anything, like I say, we can do that on a widget level, which we will take a look at. But that's the basics of setting things up through the theme styles. I'll quickly go through and set everything up so it's all consistent, and then we'll move on. So I've set everything up now. All the headings are set up, the body text, forms, on hover for the forms buttons. The only thing I haven't styled is the image because I want to leave those completely untouched so I have full control over them where I need to. What I'm going to do now is click on update. We've now set up our global styles. So we can come out of this, and if we wanted to, we can exit out of this particular page. We exit our dashboard, and if we wanted to, we could simply delete this page. It was there just to set things up, just so we've got a nice visual way of seeing the changes we make as we make them on screen. So other than that, we're now ready to move on. So in this section, we're going to be firing up Photoshop, taking a look at how we can create much more realistic mockups to present the artwork in a much more appealing fashion. Now, there are tons of places you can find these kind of mockups. You can find free options, you can find commercial options. For me, I just find it easier to use Elementor Elements. I've got a subscription to this and I use it for tons and tons of things, stock images and things like this to do mockups. With that being said, I found one that I like that we're going to use, and if we click to open this up and take a look at some of the examples, you can see we've got this nice sort of in situ image with the frame. We can go through, we've got things we could use for the hero image if we wanted to. You can see we've got a ton of really useful options, some more so than others for what we're trying to achieve, but we've got a great starting point. Like I say, you can grab some free ones to do pretty much exactly the same as what we're going to do here. So I'm going to go ahead, download this, apply a license to it, and then we're going to use this to start creating things inside Photoshop. So once I've downloaded the file and registered it with a license, I'm then ready to start working with it. So I'm going to put this into a separate folder, and we're going to open that up. And there we've got our mockups. And if we open that up, you can see we've got 6 different mockups, including a user manual to tell us exactly how to start using these. Now I'm going to be using Photoshop for this example, but you can use Affinity Photo to start working with any kind of image in Photoshop that uses smart objects. Now I'm not going to cover what smart objects are, we'll just go through and use them inside Photoshop. But if you want to see how to use them in Affinity Photo, I'll put a link in the description to the video tutorial that I've done covering exactly how to do it with a very similar kind of mockup file. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag those out of there, we're going to put those into their own separate folder, and then we can start opening those up in Photoshop and start creating things. So we start off with this one we're going to use for the sort of hero image on the website. Now the process for all of the other images is going to be exactly the same. We've got the image opened, and if we take a look on the right hand side, the way this is set up is we've got various different objects which can just turn on and off should we want to use them or remove them. So for example, we may want to turn off the plant box. We can click, we can remove that from our layout. So we've got a nice simple way of creating unique mockups, disabling the things that are not relevant to us, and so on. Next thing we want to do is go in and actually insert our image into this Your Design Here section. And this is where the smart object side of things comes in. If we expand the frame option, we'll see inside there we've got several different layers. Now if you're not used to Photoshop, layers are basically just Imagine them like a piece of acetate with some content on, and as they get stacked one on top of the other, you'll see through all of those until you get your sort of full image. That's kind of what's happening. Where you can see this little checker box, that's basically transparent. Anything else is part of the image. Okay, so let's just take a look at what we have here. You can see we've got frames, masks, and so on, but what we also have is your design. Now, if we double click on that, that will open that up. That's a smart object, which is basically one image placed inside another image. And the beauty of this is you can have Photoshop files placed inside Photoshop files. So as you can see, we've just opened this smart object up, and inside there's 4 individual layers. You've got the glass reflection, the actual outside frame, the design we're going to put in, and a background image. So if we didn't want this outside edge, we can simply click on there, turn that off, and that will then be taken out of this design. We can have a larger image. Obviously, if we want to keep that in there, which is what we're going to do, we'll leave that as is. Then we've got this your design. So that's effectively the layer that we're going to put information on. But you don't have to put it on there. As long as that layer you're working with sits underneath the glass reflection and the past, sort of like the border around the outside edge, that's all that matters, because we can see through anyway. So what we're going to do, we're going to open up the first image that we're going to work with. So if I just open this up in Photoshop, we'll just drag that onto its own page. You can see there's the image we're going to work with. So now all we need to do is drag that into this section and make sure it's in the right layer. So we're going to do, come over here, make sure we've got the move tool selected, and drag that up until we go over the image we want. We'll drop that inside there, and you can see that now positions it where we need it to be. It's too big, so what we need to do is resize this. So let's just zoom out. We'll press Control and T to switch into transform mode, and then we're going to transform that till it sits inside the boundaries of the image. We'll zoom back in a little bit. Now just using keyboard shortcuts for this, but you know, if you're comfortable with Photoshop, all these kinds of things are going to be pretty much second nature to you. So there's our image in place. We're going to hit the Enter key to confirm that transformation. And now we can just go back. We can save this, and we can go back into our original image, and you can see there is our mockup with our new piece of artwork inside it, all done through that smart object. So it's super simple to do. And like I say, if you're working with Affinity Photo, it's very similar in how to do it. And like I say, if you want to check that video out, take a look in the description to check out that link. Now, obviously, this is going to be way too big, because currently you can see the image is 3,500 pixels by nearly 2,500 pixels. That's way bigger than we actually need it. So we can now resize this in Photoshop as the first point of resize. So you could go and do this a couple of ways. You could permanently resize the image, which I would not recommend doing. Alternatively, you can just go into File, and we're going to say Save As, we're going to come down to Export, and we're going to say Save for Web. This will open up the Save for Web window. Now, as this name suggests, this is where you can optimize your image, and you can check it out to see what kind of degradation you're going to see when you're optimizing things. So a quick overview of this. Top left-hand corner, we've got the original, which is the uncompressed, unsaved version. We've got optimized, which is where you'll see the optimized version based upon any settings you choose on the right-hand side. And then if you want to do a comparative, you can do 2-up, which will give you a side-by-side, and you can switch those views over if you want to. Or we can do 4-up, and we can just try different ways of reducing the size of this to see what looks good. You know, you can kind of play about with this until you get exactly what you want to make sure that the quality and the file size are going to be exactly where you want them to be. We're going to do the 2-up version. Actually, let's just go to optimized. What we're going to do is we're going to resize this. Now, it's up to you how you want to work. Most people are not going to be on a screen resolution that's over 1920 by 1080, which is sort of full HD. And even then, chances are you're not going to have full width. So it's up to you how big you want to go with this. But for argument's sake, we're going to keep this to 1920, and we can leave it at 1280. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't really matter too much. Now, obviously, we need to zoom in a little bit to find out what the quality is going to be like. Now, currently, this is using a quality setting of 80. And you can see if we take a look in the bottom left, this is going to give us a file size of about 350 kilobytes, which is a little bit, 350K, which is a bit on the large side. So what we're going to do is we need to find that happy medium now between the quality of the image and the file size. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to a baseline of 40 first of all to see what that comes out like. So there we go. We set that to 40. That now gives us a file size of just under 120K. If you want to check this out, we're going to come in and we're going to set this to, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We got a little too far there. And you can see this is kind of where we're going to see it. This is looking at it close to 100%. And everything looks pretty good on there. Because we're going to put an overlay over this image anyway, it doesn't matter if there's a little bit of pixelation. But that's a good starting point. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just save this out from here. So we're going to click on save, and then we can just choose where we want to save. So I've already got a folder structure set up, and all we're going to do is we're going to save these into the relevant location. And we're just going to call this hero image, and we'll say save. So we've now done all the things that we need to do to make sure we've got the image where we want it to be. The next thing we can do if we want to is try to optimize these, and we'll quickly use an online service and see what kind of result we get from that. So for this, we're going to be using ShortPixel. This is the free service. You don't need to have the paid for service to use this. We're going to come into compress, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop that image into the uploader. Once that's done, we're going to let it do its little bit of job. We're going to say we're going to let it to lossy and see what we kind of get there, and then we can just check it out to see what the quality's like. So that's telling us that based upon using lossy, we should get about a 54% reduction in file size. If we want to make sure that the quality is good enough, we can click on the little eye icon, and we can see the before and after. So you can just mouse over to see the differences. And in all honesty, there really isn't much difference in quality whatsoever. And like I said, because we're going to put an overlay over this, that will generally hide some of the artifacts that you may see in there anyway. So I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. So what we need to do is just download that. So we're going to download that to our computer, and then we'll just overwrite our original version, because the compression isn't making that much of a difference, but the file size is a decent saving. So what I'll do now is I'll repeat this process for all of the other images using the various different mockups that we've got. I may choose a couple more mockups so we've got a bit of variation on the site. But for now, that's where I want to end this Photoshop, this compression session. And we can just move on to the next stage. So let's take a look at that now. So now we're ready to activate WooCommerce. Now I'm going to quickly run through the wizard. I'm not going to go in detail on how to set this up. It's all been covered. And again, there's a playlist in the description below if you want to see how to go through the entire wizard and how to set the basics up of WooCommerce. So this is going to be pretty much a whistle-stop tour of it. So let's activate that. Once we've activated it, the first thing you're going to get is this nice simple wizard. So we'll say, yep, we'll go through the process of that. So we're going to, first of all, we've got our address. So we're going to drop in some basic filler information. We'll continue. We'll say, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to worry about that. In which industry does your store operate? We'll just not worry too much about that, although we can say art and music, say continue. We can just choose now various different things, what we want to do, how do we want to set things up. We're going to say this is physical goods only. I'm going to continue. How many products do you plan to display? And we can say, well, we're going to put in 11 to 100. Currently selling elsewhere? No. You can then, if you want to, set up some options like to market on Facebook, use MailChimp and Google Ads. I'm going to disable all of those because I don't want to set those up. But obviously, if you do, choose those and go through the relevant settings. We'll hit continue. You can see we can choose a theme. Well, we've already done that side of things, so we don't need to worry about that. We could basically skip that step if we want to. So we'll say skip this step. Say enhance your store with Jetpack. I'm going to say no thanks because I'm not the biggest fan. And we'll just say continue. Okay, so once we've gone through that, now we've got a couple of different options. We can add our first product, personalize our store, set up shipping, set up tax, set up payments. Now, obviously, you would need to go through each one of those. This is more a case of a design tutorial as opposed to how to set up WooCommerce tutorial. Now, I've gone ahead, added a couple of very simple products. Next thing I want to do is just quickly set up shipping, set up payments, so you can see how that's done. So we say set up shipping. You can see our pre-filled out address details. Then we can just choose the shipping costs and so on. So we're going to say continue. We're going to set up just standard fixed rate shipping. So we're going to say we've got a fixed rate of $3.95. If we want to send this to the rest of the world, we can click to enable that. We can set a shipping inside there. Like I said, this is very simple shipping options. I've got tons of videos on how to set up shipping, which again, you can check out in the description below so you can see how to set things up there. But we'll leave the rest of the world out. We'll say we're going to just sell to our own country, which is the UK. We'll hit proceed and say enable shipping labels. If you want to do this, this is going to install extra software or extra plugins and maybe link you up to services. I'm going to say no thanks to that. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to worry about tax because we're going to just assume that this is not a taxable business. But if it is, you can run through the process of setting up whether it's VAT or regional tax or whatever it is. Set up payments, we're just going to keep this really, really simple. We're going to say that we want to have cash on delivery and we're just going to say OK to that. If you were going to use Stripe or PayPal, PayPal probably being the most obvious one most people would use, you can hit Setup on there, fill out the relevant details, which is normally just some basic info, including something along the lines of the email address that's going to be used for your PayPal account to receive payments, and a couple of other things. If you need help with that, drop some information in the comment section below, and I'll take a look at setting up a video to show you how to set up PayPal and or Stripe if you want to use that. For now though, we're going to leave this to cash on delivery just so we've got a payment option set up inside there. We'll hit done and we'll say there's the basics of our site setup. Okay, so we say skip store setup now. We're going to be taken into our store and we can take a look at some overview information on WooCommerce itself. If we come over and take a look at our products, I'll just show you what I've set up inside there. We've got probably about 8 products set up. If we click to go in and take a look, all I've done is set up a couple of categories for the products to organize things, put a description in, put in the product image, which you can see I've done using the same method as I set up earlier on in Photoshop. Then we've also got the price and so on and the short description. So it's really, really basic setup. There's nothing complex in there at all. So we've got everything set up inside WooCommerce now. So we're ready to move on to start creating the layout for our site. Okay, so now we've gone through all the boring stuff. We're now ready to start getting creative and building and designing and doing all those kinds of good things. First of all, let's go and set some basics up as part of the Hello theme. What we're going to do is we're going to come into the appearance section. We're going to come down to customize. Now, the Hello theme is very, very minimalistic. There's only a couple of things we can set in there, but they make our lives a little bit easier. First of all, site identity. We're going to change this title to something that's a bit more in keeping. So we're just going to call this Art Site. We're going to get rid of the tagline because I don't want that inside there. We're going to say select a logo, and we're going to upload the logo that we're going to use. So we'll just give that some alt text, and we'll just say select the logo. So there's our logo. We're going to skip cropping, and you can see that now drops the logo into the top section. Come back out of this, menus. You can see currently we have no menu set up. So let's just create one so we've got something we can use and reference until we want to put the actual pages we're going to create into it. So let's say create menu, and we're going to call this main menu. We're going to set this to be the primary menu, and we'll click on next. And then we can add items. So we're just going to add some basic information in. So we've got like the home page and so on. So we'll say we'll add home, we'll just pop in cart, and we'll pop in shop. We'll reorder those because we want the cart at the end, and we'll leave that as it is. Okay, so that's looking good. We'll hit publish, and you can see that now puts our navigation in the top right-hand corner. We'll amend that in a little bit, including the colors and so on. Come back out of this, exit out of this, come into your homepage settings, and later on we'll set that up, so we don't need to worry about that now. Same goes for WooCommerce, and we don't want any additional CSS. So we can close out of this, and we've set up the basics. Now we can go in and start creating our templates. So the first one we're going to do is the header template. Come to the template section and down to theme builder. This is then going to take us into Elementor Pro's theme builder section where we can create all the key template files that we need for our own custom theme. So the first thing we're going to do is say add new. We're going to select the template and we're going to just choose header from the options, and we're going to call this default header. So this is the header that's going to be applied to the entire site. Click on create template. Once you've done that, that'll open up the Elementor editor, and it'll show us all of the blocks for the headers. Now you could use these if you want to as a starting point. If you're not confident to create something of your own, you could use it as is and just change the relevant bits and pieces over, the styling and so on, or you can use them as a starting point and then edit them to get something a little more unique. However, we're going to just close this down and we're going to start from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're going to click to add a new section at the top, and this is where we're going to house our logo. So we're going to come back over to our widgets on the left-hand side and search for logo. We'll drag the site logo option up into the top, and you can see because we set the site logo inside the Hello theme, it automatically pulls that in for us. So there's our logo section at the top. We can set that up, we can configure it and do whatever we want to make sure it works how we want it to. So say link is custom URL, it's up to you what you want to do. And when you see it says site URL, but you could take that if you want to and set it to go anywhere or nowhere. So with that all set up, we'll worry about the height and all those kinds of things in a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is just add in a new section. So we're going to add another single section in, and this is where we're going to put our navigation. So come back up to our widgets, search for navigation, and you can see we've got navigation menu. We're going to drag and drop that over into there, and you can see that now pulls in our nav menu. We can now go through and configure this how we want. So we can choose what menu we want to use. So if we had multiple menus on here, we could choose which one we wanted. We've only got the one, so that's perfectly fine. You could set a horizontal or vertical layout, and then you can adjust your alignment. So we're going to say we want to place this in the center. You could, if you wanted to, stretch it, and you can see however many items are on there, it'll always make it go the entire width of the design that you've got. We'll leave this to be centered. That's perfectly fine. When we mouse over, you can see that's the effect that we currently get. It's up to you if you want to create that effect, whether you want to change it. You can do pretty much whatever you want. You can see the pointer tells us what's going to happen. So we've got none, underline, overline, double line, framed, background, and so on. So if we chose background, for example, when you mouse over, you can see you get this background effect. If you want to change the color of that, which obviously would make sense, we can come into the style section and you can see we could adjust things like the typography, the hover, the active, and so on. So we can change different sections, the drop down, the toggle button. We can control every aspect of this going. Now what we're going to do is just set this to have the pointer set to underline, and we're going to use this kind of style. We're going to come over to our style section and we're going to change our typography slightly. We're just going to make it a little thicker because it's going to be used as the navigation, and I want it to stand out a bit better than it currently does. So let's click and you can see we can come down and we can adjust the weight on there. We'll try something like 500, that's fine, and we'll also transform this so it's all uppercase. We'll adjust the color and we'll just make that just ever so slightly lighter. So we'll adjust that to get it where we want. Around about there. That's fine, and you can see we've now created our navigation. So there's our header basically in place. We can click on publish. Once we've done publish, you can see it comes and says, what's the display condition you want to apply to this? Now, a display condition is just, as its name suggests, where and how do you want to apply this particular template? We're going to click on add condition, and then we can choose to either include or exclude. So you can set up individual or multiple different display conditions. It's up to you. You can see at the moment it says include entire site, which is exactly what we want. You can click to expand that and you can see you've got some additional options inside there. So you may want to use this navigation on all your site except for WooCommerce, which may have slightly different options, or your archives or your singular. It's up to you, and you can stack these on top of each other by adding extra conditions in as and when needed. We're going to keep this really super simple and set this to be entire site and hit save and close. So we've now created our top navigation, our logo, everything is set up, and that's going to be applied to every single page on our site. So next up, we're going to repeat the same process, but we're going to go and do this for the footer. So we're going to exit to our dashboard, back to our theme builder. And what we can do now is we can come over to footer, and then we can say add new footer, and we're going to call this one default footer. Create our template, and we're going to repeat the same process now to create the footer. You can see we can choose from a library of predefined layouts if we want to, or we can start completely from scratch. So I'm going to just go and do this. I'm not going to take you through with me because it's exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the condition. So I'll come back to you once I've set the design up, and then we'll look at the condition option for the footer. Okay, so there's the footer created. All we need to do is hit publish now, add our condition, entire site is perfectly fine, hit save and close. We've now created our footer section. So let's just take a quick look now at what we've got on the page so we can see how these things are working and are all set up. So there we go. There's our header section with our logo and navigation. There's our footer section all ready to have some content placed into it. So let's just jump back into the dashboard and exit out of all of this, and we're going to come in and create our first page. We're going to add our new home page in. So we're going to call this home page. We'll publish that, and that's perfectly fine. We'll publish. We'll edit with Elementor, and we're now ready to start building this page out. First things first, let's get shot of this title at the top. So we come to settings and we're going to come to hide title. That gets rid of that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new section. So we're going to add a single row column section in there, and this is where our hero image is going to be placed. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up to be the way we want it to look. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to come into the style option, and from there we're going to add in an image. So we're going to click to add an image. We'll click on the plus, and we're going to use the hero image that we created earlier inside Photoshop. So let's just simply upload that image to our site. Once that's uploaded, we'll just give that some alt text, and we'll just call this hero image, and we'll insert that media. So that's now put the image inside there. We just need to configure the way we want this to look. So what we need to do is just set a few parameters. Position, we're going to set to be center center. We're going to set this to be fixed, so it'll sit in the background and scroll up as a nice window through. We're going to set we don't want any repeat on this because we want just the image to be on there one time, and we're going to set this to be cover. So it'll contain it inside the port that you can see, and if that gets bigger or smaller, then it'll adjust accordingly. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is just put an overlay over this so we can make sure that our text that we're going to place on top will just sit there and look really nice. So classic, that's perfectly fine. We're going to choose the background color, which is going to be black. And then we can just adjust the opacity. So we're going to set this to about 0.4. That should be pretty good. Now, obviously, you can't really see much of it at the moment. So we've got a couple of different ways we could work with this. We're going to come back to the layout option, and we can now set a default height if we want to. So where it says height, we're going to click on that, set a minimum height, and we can adjust that to whatever we think is fine. So let's start off with about 500 and adjust if we need to. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is drop in some content that makes a little bit of sense. This is where we're going to drop in our headings. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull in a new widget. It's going to come into our headings, drag and drop that into this area. We're going to paste in the text we want to use. We're going to set this to be H4, so in the hierarchy of things, it's not as important as the next section. We're going to set this to be aligned to the center. Now, you can see at the moment, this is pulling in the style that we set up as part of our theme style. And as I said when we were doing that, we can override these things by simply using the widget style. So we can override it on a widget level. And that just basically means if we make changes to various different parameters inside here, like color, spacing, font size, and all that, it'll only apply to this specific instance, which gives us a lot of design flexibility. Okay, so we've configured things. We just need to come in and style it. So we're going to come back into our styles. Now, we don't need to change the font style because we're using Mooly, which is the font style that we want to use. We are going to change the text color first of all. So we're going to set that to be white. So that now stands off the background a little better. We're going to change this to be a size 16. So we're just controlling the size of this. The weight we're going to set to 200. And then we're going to set this to be uppercase. And finally, we're going to adjust the letter spacing to make this just a fair bit wider. So we're going to set this to about 7. There we go. So that means we've got this nice little sort of section at the top that gives us the information about who the artist is and so on. Okay, so with that done, the next thing we need to do is pull in another heading. So we're going to come over, we're going to drag another heading in, we're going to drop that underneath there, and we're going to do pretty much exactly the same again. We're going to drop in some different text. We're going to drop in the type of art that it is. We're going to set this to be H1 because this is going to be the primary text we want on this particular section. We'll set this to be center aligned, and now we need to go in and style this differently because at the moment it doesn't really stand out too much. So to do that, we're going to come out to the style section. Going to change the color to white again so it stands out. The typography, we're going to come into there and we're going to set this up. So Mooly is just going to be using the default. That's fine. We're going to set our font size to pretty large. We're going to set this to 110 pixels. We're going to change this to make sure that it's nice and big and bold. And if we hadn't put this in capitals, just to make sure that if we make any changes, we'll set that to be uppercase as well. So we've now got our section in there. We've got our subheading, our main heading. We're now finally going to drop a button in underneath it. So we're going to drag and drop a button in, position that where we want. And again, you can see this is going to pick up our default styling. So we'll set this to be centered. If we want to make any changes, so obviously we do, we're going to just change this text to shop the collection. So there we go. I don't want the hover effect on there. I don't want the sort of drop shadow. So what I can do is I can simply come into the style section, come down to the box shadow and just make sure there's nothing applied in there. So we can just set the blur, we'll take that off just to make sure. And we'll do the same thing then with any box shadow. So it means that we don't have that styling applied to that. So there's our top section. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger again. So we're going to select it. We've got the minimum height of 500. We're going to bump that up a little bit just so it has a little bit more visual impact. So we're going to go to something like about 650. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've now created our top section. As you can see, it's a fixed background, so that looks pretty cool. We can see the artwork through this, and that gives a nice visual representation of the artwork, kind of in situ, as if the artist was working on it using that design that we set up as part of Photoshop. So there's the first part done. The next thing we're going to do is some information about the artist underneath. So we're going to scroll down, we're going to add a new section. Again, we're going to set this up to be 2 columns this time. So we're going to select 2 columns. We're going to put in some padding and spacing around the outside of this. We're going to come in, we're going to unlock these 2, and we'll try 70 to the top and the bottom. And again, like I say, with everything like this, if we want to make changes, we can easily do that. I'm going to grab a heading section and drop that in on the left hand side, and we're simply going to put the artist's name in there. So we're just going to put that in. We'll just paste that in there. We'll set this to be H3, and we're going to adjust the aligning to make sure this is on the right hand side. And again, if we want to make changes to this, we can set any kind of styling we want, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Next thing we want to do is just put in a small divider in between, and then we're going to just drop in another heading underneath. So we're going to come in, drop a heading under there, and we're just going to put in what type of artist she is, which is a botanical artist. So we're going to drop that inside there, set that to be right aligned as well. Okay, so there's the info in there. Let's just set that to H4. The info's in there. We can worry about styling that in a moment because we've got the next section we want to put in. So we're going to come over and we're going to choose our widgets, and we're going to grab a text widget, drop that inside there, and we're going to put the text we want to use in for the artist. So with that in place, we can drop in one more thing, which is going to be a button at the bottom, which we're going to change to read more. Now, obviously, you'll come back in and link these once you've created all your page structure, but for now, this is a perfectly fine starting point. Now, the next thing I want to do is adjust the alignments on these two different sections and also the size of them. So I want this section on the left-hand side to sit centered with regards to the right-hand side. So it means that it doesn't matter how much content's in the right-hand side, this will always be centered on the left. Now, to do that, it's super easy. We're going to click on this column by clicking on this top left-hand little icon that pops up. And from there, we can adjust things like the horizontal align or the vertical align, column width, and so on. So we'll set this to be middle, and then you see all the content will sit in the middle of that particular section. We're also going to make sure this is selected. We're going to set this to be, we'll try 40%. That'll be okay. So you can see now this takes a little less space up. This gives us a bit more space on the right-hand side. Okay. Next thing we want to do is adjust the text on here as well, because at the moment it's a little too small and we want to make it stand out and make it a bit more prominent. So what we need to do is select this, come out to the style section, and from there we're going to adjust the typography. So we're going to set this up to be about 80 pixels. There we go, that looks nice and tidy and large. We're going to change the weight on this to make it a little thinner. Now obviously, like I said earlier on, it depends on the font you're using to whether it's actually supporting the font width that you're setting. Next up, we're going to adjust our little line on there. We don't want that to be full width. We're going to adjust that. We're going to set that to be probably around 20%. We'll adjust to go to the right-hand side. And what we're going to do is we're going to change it from solid, and we're going to call it dotted, come into our style. And what we can do is we can either change the color or we can change the opacity. So I'm going to drop the opacity down so it's a really subtle little separator line. And then we're going to come to the botanical artist, and that's perfectly fine the size that is. I'll leave that there. But what I'm going to do is make it slightly lighter so it's not quite so prevalent on the page. So we're going to drop that down a little bit, like so. There we go. I'm going to just come into this, and we're going to adjust the gap on there ever so slightly. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay. We now need just to make a bit more space between this left-hand section and the right-hand section. So you can do that in various different ways. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the left-hand column, come out to advanced, uncheck the padding options, and then on the right-hand side of that, we're going to set something like, we'll try 50 pixels. That looks good. Click on the right-hand column and do the same thing. Come to advanced. We're going to uncheck the padding options, but this time on the left, we're going to set 50 pixels in there. So you've got a nice space in between the two sides. So that's all looking pretty cool. Now, there's one more thing I want to do just before we sort of finish this little block section. I want to change the background color ever so slightly. I want this to sort of be just an ever so slightly pale gray. So select the section and come over to style. And from there, let's just make sure you've got that section set. I'm going to come over to the background section, click on classic, and from there we're going to drop in the color we want to use, which is a super light gray. And you can see that just assigns that little bit of grayness to it. Finally, we're going to come to the border. We're going to uncheck those. We're going to set a border of solid, and we're going to set the bottom to be 1 pixel. We're going to simply drop in that light gray color we just chose so we can reference that, and we're going to just drop it down a couple of shades so it's really, really subtle. Okay, so you probably won't see it right now, but when we finish the page, you'll see that separation there. Okay, let's add another section in. This time we're going to just create a 2-column section, and this is where we're going to have 2 nice ways of going through to into the shop or into the portfolio for the artist. First thing we want to do, again, is come in to advanced, and we're going to put some padding at the top and bottom. We want to keep nice white space between each of these sections just so they stand out from each other and they don't sort of encroach upon each other's spacing. Now, what we're going to use on here is we're going to just come in and we're going to set up some call to actions. And the reason we're going to do that is because we can create some nice simple hover effects that just adds a little bit of motion to the site when someone interacts with these different sections. And it's a nice visual cue to show people that they can do something like interact with this and go to a different part of the site. So let's come over and we're going to search for call to action. And there we go. There's our call to action. So we're going to grab our first one, drop it into the first column. And now we can go through the process of styling this and setting it up how we want it to look. So you can see when we mouse over, we get this sort of interaction of the placeholder image, zooms in a little bit and rotates ever so slightly. That's a good starting point, but we're going to change that over to something else. So the first thing we want to do is change this to cover. That gives us a nicer looking image. I'm going to click to change our image. We're going to choose an image we think is going to work well. And I'm going to pull this one up because it looks a kind of interesting image that's not just focused on the actual artwork. So we click insert, and you can see that now drops the basic information in there for us. And now we can just go ahead and start styling things. So image size, we can set that to whatever we think is going to give us the best representation. So we'll go for, I'm going to go for full because these are sized, they're not too big. We're going to go to content. And from there, we can now set the content up on how we want things to look. First thing we're going to do is type in the title for this, which is Shop for Prints. We don't want any description in there, so we're going to select the description and remove that from there. The title of H2 is perfectly fine, and then we're going to change the button text to Start Shopping. So we give it a call to action for where they need to go. And then the link for our shop is basically just /shop/. Apply to button only. Ribbon, well, we don't want a ribbon on this, so we can leave that as it is. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. We're starting to get where I want to be. Let's go to the Style tab, and let's just configure this. So we're going to set the height on here. We want this to be about 360 pixels, so there we go. The alignment center, that's fine. We're going to leave that as it is. Come to the content section, and we can start styling things in there if we need to. So you can see we can change the colors, the title color, and so on. So we're going to change the title color. And we're going to set that to be white to make sure that we control exactly what that's going to be. The button, we're going to come down to the button section and we can just configure that again inside there. So you can see at the moment, it's white on white. So we need to change that text color and we're going to set that to be a dark gray. You see that now stands out immediately from there. Now if we go over the button, you can see that actually shows transparent, which doesn't look good. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to the hover section. We're going to set our text color to be that same gray color. We're going to set our background color to be white, and we're not going to worry about the border because that's already set. So you can see now that just allows us to keep that white button all set up inside there. So we're nearly there. We're getting closer to the end effect that I want. So we're going to click on hover effects, and this is where we can control how this looks when we hover over it. So what we're going to do, hover animation, we're going to set to be none. Hover animation for the background, zoom in is perfectly fine, but we're going to set an overlay so we can make this white text stand off a little better. So we're going to click on there, we're going to choose black, and then we're going to adjust the opacity to taste. So we're going to set this to be quite light, but it allows us to see the actual text of the Shop for Prints option. Okay, so that's the basics there all set up. There's one more thing I want to do to this hover effect. I want to switch over to the hover option, and inside there we're going to set a CSS filter. I'm going to set that to be blurred. So what happens is when you mouse over, you can see the background photo will blur. So it gives a nice effect and allows us to see the Shop for Prints and the Start Shopping button just that little bit clearer. And that's looking pretty good, but there's one thing I'm not too happy with, and that's the image that's being used in this. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've change the aspect ratio of that, because currently this is a portrait image, and that's kind of why you're seeing it looking a little zoomed in. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our content section. We're going to change this image, and I would always recommend, if you find that you're setting things up and you're not happy with the way things look, adjust them, make changes, make sure everything looks good, because these are important things when you're working with a client. So I'm going to drag and drop in the edited images. So these are the same images that I was going to use. They've just been set to be portrait. As you can see there, there's the one I've edited. And we click, that was the original one. So we'll insert that media, and you can see now that looks infinitely better because the aspect ratio works much better. So that's the first one. That's the Shop for Prints one all done. Next thing we need to do now is basically duplicate that for the next one. So we're going to come over, we're going to click on this top right hand corner. We're going to right click on there and we're going to say duplicate. And we can just drag that over to the right hand side. And now what we need to do is just come in and make changes. So we'll change the background image for the image that I want. We'll say insert that there. We're going to change the button. So if we come over to the content, we can say shop for prints. We want to say view my work. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to come in and change some options on there. So let's just take that link out until we know what link we're going to use. We're going to change the start shopping and say start browsing. There we go. And we're going to come to our style section. We're going to come into our content, and from there, we're going to just make sure that our title is set up to be capitalized. So I'm going to change the transform to uppercase. That looks a lot better. And we're going to adjust the size on there. And we'll set that to about 26. Now, let me just show you a quick way now of copying that over. We're going to right click. We're going to say copy. We're going to right click on this one. We're going to say paste style. And you can see now that picks up all the styling we've just applied. So we now have our two sort of call to action sections that allow you to view work or shop for prints. Both are animated, both give us a nice visual representation when you interact with them. So we've got a couple more things I want to do. We're going to put in a featured work section, which is going to be a link through to the sales section on the shop. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another section in, like we've done before. We're going to just set this up to have plenty of space around it. So we're going to come in and we're going to set the section into advanced, and we're going to set section to have 70 at the top, 70 at the bottom to give us a lot of nice white space. And again, like I say, this is things you could adjust as you go along to fine tune and refine the overall design. We're going to drop in a heading section in here, and we're going to drop in the title for this, which is going to be featured work. H2 is perfectly fine because this is going to be an important section. And we're going to come into the style, we're going to come into our typography, and we're just going to set this to be uppercase. Okay, so that looks good. We're going to drop in a divider underneath that, and we're just going to quickly configure that. So we're going to set that to be dotted, centered. We'll change the size of this to be about 20% again, and we're going to come into the style section. We'll adjust the gap on there to tighten things up a little, and we'll change this so it's a little lighter. I say it's all about subtlety when you're working with sites like this. The images should be the key focal point, whereas the actual pieces of content need to sort of fade into the background a little bit to allow those images to sort of shine through. Okay, so we've set that up. The next thing we need to do is drop in our featured images. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, let's come over to our widgets, and we're just going to type in Woo, and from there we're going to grab the products option. So we're going to grab that, drop that underneath our little divider, and you can see this now pulls in a range of products. What we can do now is we can adjust and configure things on here. So at the moment it says columns 4, which is fine. That looks quite nice. However, we only want to have one row because we're going to show one row of featured products, and that's all we're going to show. Now we don't need pagination because we are literally just showing a couple of products that we say are featured. We want to make a bit of space around this though before we go any further. So let's come into our advanced section, uncheck this. At the top, we're going to add in 30 pixels, and the bottom, we're going to add in 30 pixels there as well. And again, if we want to adjust those, we can do. So we're going to select those, select our Woo products, and under content, you can see we have query. Now this is set to be featured work. At the moment, it's showing the latest products. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose featured, and then all our products may well disappear. If you have that, they do disappear. All you need to do is go into the dashboard, into your products, and set some of those products to be featured. And I'll show you that in a moment. Now you can see it says include and exclude. If you want to filter these out, we can exclude different categories or tags and things, or we can include only specific tags and categories. Up to you how you want to sub-filter this. We're going to leave it as is. We're just going to choose the top 4 featured images or products. Order by date, order by descending. Up to you. Again, you can choose title, price, popularity, whole range of different things. You can even randomize this so each time someone lands on the page, they'll have a different set of options to choose from. Okay, so that's the basics of dropping that in there. We can now come to the Style tab and we can configure different things. Now you can see it says your theme style widget is often affected by your themes and plugins. Well, because we're using the Hello theme, it doesn't really style much, so we're pretty safe with that. However, you can see some things don't really fit in with what we're working with, like the prices being in green, things being aligned to the left-hand side. So let's adjust those kinds of things. Let's set the alignment to be centered, and that immediately rectifies that problem there. Now what we can do is we can come down. If we want to apply anything to the images, we can do that. We can also adjust the rows and the column gaps to increase or decrease the spacing. But I kind of like the way it looks straight out of the box. That looks okay. Titles, what we're going to do on there is going to make those just a little bit heavier. So we're going to click and we're going to just adjust the weight on there. And we'll try 400, and that looks a bit better. Okay. Star rating, well, we're not using any ratings on here at the moment, so we don't have to worry about that. We are going to do, though, is going to come down to our price, and we're going to make those darker. So we're going to set that to be dark. We're also going to adjust the typography. So we're going to set those to be 400. Actually, let's go for 500, so they're a bit heavier. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the size on those so they stand out just ever so slightly. Probably around 15. There we go. Let's just set that like that. Actually, let's go a little bit stronger again. Let's try 700. Okay, that looks good. So we've now set those up. Now we can adjust the button. So we're going to set the button color to be white, because we want these to stand out from the rest of things. We want the buy now button or add to basket button to be very prominent, very clear to see. So we'll set the text to white. The background we're going to set to be this dark gray. Border color, we're not going to worry about a border on there. Typography, well, we need to change that a little bit. We're going to set that to be uppercase again, and we're also going to change the weight on there. So set those to 400. We'll set the size to be in keeping. We'll set that to about 15. Transform those to uppercase, so they now stand out. Actually, let's make this a little heavier again. Let's try 600. And adjust. Make them a little smaller, about 14. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I like that. And if we want to, we can adjust the text padding and the spacing and all those kinds of things. So you can see now we've got our add to cart button. We can change the hover state if we want to as well. So we could say we wanted to set the color, we'll set white on there. And what we'll do is we'll say the background color will change to this blue color. We'll try that. There we go. When you mouse over, you now get some visual notification that you're going to be doing something. Okay. Border radius, 0. I like the nice square edges. If you want to adjust the text padding, you can do that. So we still have tons of other things we can change on here if we want to. The box, the flash sales, all those kinds of things. Set those up as you see fit. However, what we've done is now we've created a great looking homepage. Let's update this page and let's just hop over to our test site and take a look at this page in action and see if we think anything needs to be tweaked, any spacing, any wording, anything at all. Okay, so there's our homepage. Let's take a little look at this. Our navigation at the top is all working. We've got our nice hero section at the top, our buttons, information about our artist. Then we've got our nice call to actions with the animation effects, the blurs and so on. And then we've got the featured artwork for each of the featured products. And our footer at the bottom. So everything is looking tidy. Now I would probably go through and tweak a few things on here, adjust the spacing above these call to action, reduce it a little bit underneath maybe. So I'm going to go and quickly adjust those things. And then we're going to come back and take a look at how we make sure that everything works on mobile devices. Now, making sure your site looks fine on mobiles and tablets is something that's super important, and Elementor Pro and Elementor makes pretty much super easy. All we need to do is switch between the different preview modes. To do that, we come to the bottom and we've got responsive mode, which is the little icon that looks like a computer screen. We click on that. We have 3 options currently: desktop, tablet, and mobile. If we switch to tablet view, you can see now our screen will change over to show us the tablet representation of what our site will look like, at which point we can now come in and fine-tune anything that doesn't look right. Now, the important thing to consider here is what you change on the tablet view will also scale down to the mobile view. But you can still adjust the mobile view independently. But if you don't, whatever you change on the tablet will cascade down to the mobile. It always goes down. It never goes back up. So in other words, if you change the mobile, the changes in the mobile will not have any impact at all upon the tablet or the desktop. It only works top down. So what we can do is we can adjust the way the things look on mobiles, or on tablets, I should say, first of all. So we can click on this, we can adjust the size of the text, for example. So at the moment, that's probably a little too large. Let's adjust that. So to adjust the size, make sure everything looks good. There we go. Around 80 on there. We'll adjust the line height as well, just to give us a bit more breathing space on there. So that's adjusted that now for tablets. But what we can do is we can either come back down to the responsive mode option at the bottom and switch it into phone mode, or we can use this little symbol next to the size, and anywhere you see this now, you can adjust the settings on those devices. So line height, letter spacing, size, and so on. So if we click on there, we can choose to go down to mobile. You see now that'll switch to mobile view, and we can adjust the size on there accordingly. So we'll change that over, so that looks good as well. So we'll adjust the botanical art. Actually, let's just put that onto 2 lines. It doesn't matter so much. Come to the first section, the sort of subheading, and we'll adjust the text on there as well. so it doesn't look quite so squashed up. So we'll adjust that. We'll adjust the line height, bit of breathing space. And if you want to adjust the padding and the margins and so on, you can do that. So we can select this section and you can see we've got the minimum height. So we can adjust the minimum height now for the mobile device and so on. So we can adjust that on there until we get what we want. So we'll just say we'll set that to about 400. There we go. And now you can keep on doing this, going through these different sections to make sure it looks good on all the different devices. You can do the same for your headers, your footers, to make sure all those are in line. And the nice thing with this now, with the latest version of Elementor, is you can see we can now edit in line. Currently we're editing the page content, but if I want to edit the header, I can simply come over and you can see we've got this little yellow symbol that says edit header. I can click on there. We'll say save the changes that we've made to this page. And you can see now we're working with the header. So what we can do is we can select the logo, for example, and we can make that smaller. So we could come over and adjust the size on there. So you can see we can set the maximum width, the maximum width on there. So we'll adjust that to get what we want so it isn't quite so in your face. There we go. And then once we finish with that, we can simply come back over our page section, click the yellow edit page, hit save, and we're now editing the page. So we can go through, like I say, edit all this to make sure it looks good on all the different devices, just using these simple techniques to style things to make sure it all looks exactly as you want it to. So with a little bit of time and effort and tweaking, you can see this is our desktop view. Everything is looking nice and neat and tidy. Jump over to our tablet view. You can see that now adjusts to compensate for the smaller viewport that we have. You can see our products now changed to be in 2x2 instead of 4x1. And if we jump over to mobile view finally, you can see we adjust even more so. So we've got everything is laid out nice and neat and tidy. So that's how we go about setting things up, switching over to mobile, switching over to tablet, and making sure that we've set everything up to look as good as it can across all those different devices. And that's the home page pretty much covered off. The final thing we need to do is just set this to be the default home page. So let's just switch this back to desktop view. We'll click update to make sure whether we've saved any of the changes, and we'll just hop back out of Elementor. And from there, we're going to come back into our dashboard, down to our settings and down to reading. And from there, we can set a static home page. We're going to select home page, choose the home page to be home page. Hit save changes. And now we come back to our test site and refresh this. Home is now our home page, all set up, nice, looking good. Okay, so now we've done that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on in the next section to take a look at how we can work with setting up our default shop page. So the next thing we need to do is create the shop page. Now, there's a little bit of a problem with this I want to demonstrate to you. If we jump over into the site itself and we come over to the shop page, by default, WordPress and WooCommerce will set up a typical shop page for you, and that's perfectly fine. But we can't really do much to this. We can't edit it because if we come back over the dashboard and we go to our pages, we'll find there's a page called shop. If we go into edit that, we can open the page up and we can see we can access the shop page. If we click on edit with Elementor, we'll open the page up and we'll get this error saying the content wasn't found. It's because it's being used as a template that's predefined as part of WooCommerce. So how do we get around this? It's not as complicated as you may think. Let's come back out of this page, and what we need to do is forget all about that shop page for now. We're going to come into the template section and down into our theme builder. From there, we're going to come in and we're going to go to the product archive. So you can see once you install WooCommerce, you'll have these two new sections, single product and product archive. So we're going to click on the product archive and we're going to create our new archive. So we're going to call this product archive. Actually, let's put default at the beginning of that so we know what we're doing with it. So we say create template, and then we can create our own custom template. Now you can, if you want to, use one of the predefined templates as a starting point, entirely up to you. For this example, we're going to X out of that and we're just going to come into the page itself. Now, what we have on the left-hand side are different widgets that are specific to the WooCommerce archive page. So you can see we've got archive title, products, and archive description, and then we have some generic WooCommerce options underneath. Now, what we need to do is just grab that archive products, drag and drop that onto our page, and we now have pretty much exactly the same as what you saw on the shop page. However, because this is being done inside Elementor, we can now control all the different aspects of it like we did with our featured image or our featured products. So what can we do? What we need to do now is basically match this up style-wise to what we have in this section. So our text, our add to cart, our finance, the amount of money it was going to cost, the styling and so on. So the easiest way of doing that is to copy that information over. To do that, I've opened up a second tab and I've gone ahead and loaded into Elementor, the home page. So we've got this section which we can now use. Now the easiest thing to do is to copy all that information. And what do I mean by copy it? I don't mean open this up and then go through all the different settings. What we can do is, because we're using a very similar type of widget, we can simply come up to the widget sort of handle in the top right hand corner, click on that, then we're going to right click and choose copy. We're going to come back to our archive page and we're going to come back at the same place. We're going to right click and say paste style. And you'll find then that'll pick up the spacing, it'll pick up all the styling for the buttons, for the text, for everything. And we literally just saved ourselves 10 minutes worth of work by just simply copying and pasting that over. Okay, so if you wanted to tweak anything, we could do that. If we wanted to add any more widgets in, we could also do that. So you may want to put in breadcrumbs, for example. Well, you can drag that, drop that into the site, and you can see there's our breadcrumbs for the site. We could then go through and style those accordingly. Entirely up to you what you want to do on there. For this example, because we're not dealing with many products, I'm going to take that back out because this is a very simplistic kind of site. So what else could we do? Well, if we wanted to, we could put a nice big banner heading across the top there to make it known that it's the shop. So let's make our lives a little easier. Let's come back over to this section. We're going to scroll back up to the top. We're going to use this as an example. So what we can do is we can just do the same again. We can copy this, come back over, scroll down the page so we're outside the actual widgets we have created already into this area where we can create a new section. Right click and say paste. And that will paste in that entire section block. Now we could drag this up from here, but if you have a long page that could get a little bit awkward. So what we can do is we can easily use the navigator. Click to open the navigator up, we get this little floating panel in the right hand side, and this will show us all of the different sections. If you want to keep on using this and you don't want it to sort of overlap your information, you can just drag that over to the right hand side of your screen, let go, and it'll dock to the side. So now what we can do is we can easily come down to these different sections, expand them out and see everything that's inside every different part of this. And we can just grab this column and drag it to the top, or we can undo that. And we can just grab the entire section and drag that above. So now what we've done is we put that title section inside there. Let's close the navigator down and let's just tweak this a little bit, because obviously it's a bit big and imposing and we don't need to have all that on there. So let's quickly just tweak that to make a little more sense. We'll select it, we'll adjust the height on this because we don't need to be anywhere near as big as this. We'll drop it down to about 320, somewhere around there. We'll change the size of this as well because it's a little bit on the imposing side. So we'll just change that typography. We'll drop that down a little bit, maybe to 80. And we'll take out shop the collection because, well, we're already shopping the collection. So we'll just delete that from there. And we now have a nice fixed header. We can publish that and we get taken through to the add a condition again. Now the conditions are important at this point because it'll tell it exactly where to use this template. So we say add a condition and you can see it says all product archives. Click to expand that out. You can see we have different options to what we had with the first template we looked at when we were setting things like the headers and footers. So what we can do is we could set this for the shop page, all product archives, the search results, product categories, or product tags. Now it's up to you. You may want to have different layouts for different parts of your site. However, for this example, working with all product archives is perfectly fine because if someone's searching for a product, you'll have the results in the same kind of page. So we'll say that's perfectly fine and we'll say save and close. We've now created our own custom shop page. So let's take a look at this in action. We're back onto our test site, and as you can see, if we come through now to the shop page, click on there, it now takes us through to our new custom design shop page with our custom header and everything styled to look the way that we want. So it's not as complicated as you first may have thought, and it gives us a lot more control over how this all looks. Now, if there are any elements on the page you may think that you want to style and you don't have control of those, maybe inside Elementor, you could, if you wanted to, target those directly with custom CSS code. I'm not going to go into that because that's probably a bit too complicated for what I want to cover in this particular tutorial, but those options are there should you want to get in and customize things even further. Now that we've created our custom archive page for our shop, what about the actual page for each individual product? If we take a look currently, it's using basically a default layout that's part of WooCommerce. The buttons don't match up to what we want. You know, there's a few things we need to tidy up inside here. So let's take a look at how we can create our own custom shop single post page. It's basically going to do the same kind of things we've done before. We're going to come back into our theme builder section. This time we're going to choose the single product and we're going to create our first single product. We'll call this default single product and we'll say create template. Now from this point, we could do one of two things. We could choose one of the predefined layouts and use that as the starting point, or we may want to just use it and use it exactly as it is. It's entirely up to you. And that's what we're going to do. Today, we're just going to take a look at making our lives easy by using what's already available to us. So we've only got a couple of different options. They really are quite limited in what you can do. But like I say, you can use these as a starting point and then edit them to your own heart's content to get exactly what you want throughout your design. So let's just choose this first one. We'll say insert that. That will then download all the assets, and you can see that now inserts the layout. Now obviously there's a few things that are wrong with this, things like the font styling. It's not necessarily what we want to set up because the template and the widgets are overriding what we want to set up. So we can rectify that quite easily. All we need to do is come over any of these elements. So for example, this section at the top, which is the sort of breadcrumbs to this particular product, and we can right click and we can say reset style. And that will then take off any widget styling and just reset it back to the default styling. So it'll pick up the fonts that we've used and we set up through our theme style, our style kit, you know, kind of thing. Same with the heading, we can right click, we can say reset style, and that now starts to pick up our formatting. So we can just quickly go through, reset all those different elements, making sure that everything is back to what it was originally. We can do the same thing with the buttons and so on, so we can change all those. However, I think I'll leave that as it is because that's pretty much in keeping to what we have. So we can quickly just come in, reset everything, and then adjust it to our taste once we've set everything up. So let's just do this final section by here. We'll reset our styles there. Now obviously that looks a little bit on the terrible side, but that's easy enough to rectify. Now let's start with this related product section. If we click to take a look at it, you can see it's edit product related. So this is the related products, and it's just one of the widgets you have inside Elementor Pro. What we can do is, because that's just using a very similar grid to what we set up for the archive page and also on the home page for the featured images or the featured products, we could come back and do the same again. So we can just right click, copy this, jump back into our template, right click and say paste style. And you can see that now picks the styling up from there. And we can just quickly change this. We don't want 4 columns. We're going to set that to 2. And that now immediately looks a lot better. It's also in keeping with the design aesthetic that we've set up for our homepage and our archive page. So I'm not going to go through tons of different settings inside here. I just want to show you how easy it is to edit all these different sections and just assign it anywhere you want. So for example, with this, we may say that we want to change this from heading 1 to heading 2, and it'll pick up and continue with the styling that we've set up on there. So we've created a custom single post page or single product page. We can now click on publish and we get taken through to the add condition options again. So we can say add a condition, include products. Click to expand it. You can see it's very similar to what we had with the archive. We can choose products, which is the global range of different products, or we can filter on down through. And if you look at this, there's a hierarchy being used here. Products is the very, very top level. So this applies to anything that has something to do with a product. Next up, you've got in a category. So any products in a specific category. So we click on that. You can see we've got all categories, or we could filter it down to different categories. Then if you go through to in child product categories, it filters down another level and so on and so forth. So you can use this to control exactly what happens in that level and below. So we'll set it back to products, so that's fine, and we'll say save and close. We've now created our custom single product. Come back over now to our example page and we'll refresh this. And there we go. We now have our styling set up. Now there are no related products on this one because there's nothing actually selected inside here. But you can see that it's very easy to take the basics of a predefined template and use those as your starting point, and then you can just tweak and adjust to get to exactly what you want inside there. Now, one of the other important parts of any online shopping experience is the account page. And as you can see, the account page inside here, because we're using the Hello theme, is basically unstyled. We've got all the different elements we need in there, but that's pretty much all we have. But we can edit that. Now I'm going to give you a very brief overview of how we can set this up. But if you want a much more in-depth tutorial on how you can create a much more customized My Account section, I'll put a link in the description to a video I just released that'll take you through to create much more unique, much more feature-rich and comprehensive account sections for your WooCommerce store. Now when you install WooCommerce, it adds in several different pages. We've already seen the shop page, but it also adds in things like My Account. So what we need to do is go in and edit that. Now it's not as complicated as it first may seem. You can see if we come into the pages section, we've got My Account. So we can edit that, but we can also then edit it with Elementor. Because what happens is it basically puts a simple short code in, which is this one you can see right here. So if we go in and edit with Elementor, Elementor will automatically just insert a new section, and then that'll drop in the My Account information. And that's what you can kind of see right here. So we could use this to just tidy things up a little bit. You could get creative if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. And like I say, the other video that I've created will show you in a lot more detail how you could do just that. But just for simplicity's sake, I just want to show you how you can make this look a little bit better and just take out that sort of horrible look where everything just sort of butts up against the headers and the footers and all that kind of stuff. So let's just tidy things up just a little bit. Now the first thing I want to do is, you can see by default it pulls this shortcode into the text editor, and that's not necessarily the best way of doing it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut that out of there, and we're just going to simply delete this. We're going to come over and we're going to search for shortcode. Drag and drop the shortcode into there, and then we'll simply paste the shortcode in, and it brings the same thing back up. Might just be me being a little bit OCD, a bit nitpicky, but I'd rather do it that way. Okay. So there's our basic layout, all the things we want in there. And again, if you wanted to style this with CSS, you could get stuck in and get as creative as you want to. But we're going to keep this really simple and clean. So what we're going to do is just make our account a little bit more logical. First of all, we're going to come down to the settings in the bottom corner, and we're going to turn off the title. We're going to do that manually. Next up, we're going to do a new section. So what I'm going to do is just click to add a new section, make this a single row and column, and position that above the actual content. Select that, come into style, and what we're going to do is we're going to set a background inside here. We're going to do a really pale grey, something like this. Maybe a little paler again. There we go. Okay, we're going to make a bit of room underneath where we've got all our links and everything. So we're going to do like we did before. We're going to put in 50 pixels of padding top and bottom. And then we're going to come in and we're going to grab a heading. We're going to drop in there. We're going to center that. I'm going to set that to H3, and we're going to change that to My Account. And once we've done that, we're going to come back and we're going to come to our widgets, and we're going to do a search for breadcrumb. And we're going to drag in the Woo breadcrumbs and drop that in there. And the same again, we're going to center that. Now I need to make this background just a little darker because it doesn't look like it's showing anywhere near enough. So let's just darken that. There we go, that's better. And we'll just add in a little bit of extra spacing around this section. So we'll select the section, and what we're going to do is we're going to come back to layout, and we're going to come into our column gap, and we're going to set those to extended, just so we have a little bit more room. And we're going to select this column section, and we're going to set the vertical align to middle, just to make sure everything lines up nice and tidy. Okay, so we'll hit update on there now. We'll come back into what we had originally. We'll refresh this, and we now have at least something that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more professional. Like I say, you could get as creative as you wanted to with this, and I would highly recommend you take a look at the dedicated tutorial on how you can completely and utterly customize the My Account section in your site. But just before we leave this section, let me just show you why I put the breadcrumbs in. You can see it says home and My Account. Now home is basically right back to the beginning of the website. But if we go into one of these endpoints, as it's called, like for example, we go into orders, you can see that updates the breadcrumbs to show us exactly where we are within our structure of our account. So I just think it's a nice way of making people see exactly where they are, what they're looking at in a nice visual but simple fashion. So before we finish this section up, we just need to go ahead and put the My Account link into the navigation. Otherwise people are not going to know it's there. To do that, we're just going to come back into Appearance, into Menus, and from there you can see we've got Pages. My Account will select that, add it to our menu and position it where we want. We'll just click to expand that, and we'll just put a capital for the A, which isn't really necessary, I suppose, because we've capitalized everything, but my OCD, like I say. We'll just hit save on the menu, and we'll come back to our site just to test it out. We'll refresh, and we've got My Account, which we can go into, and everything is laid out as we'd expect it to, as we just set up. So that's where we finished with the My Account section. And obviously there are more pages you could get in and customize and edit and style, and the process is pretty much exactly the same. You know, most of WooCommerce is all controlled via shortcodes. So you could simply go into the cart page, you can go to the checkout page, any of those, and then edit things, customize things so everything looks the way you want it to. If you want to get in really down and dirty, you can get stuck in and start changing things through CSS. There's a whole world out there of what you can do to this to make it truly unique. I wanted to show you the basics so you can get grounded in it, and then it's up to you how far you want to take this. So now we're ready to create the portfolio for this particular website. Now there's lots of different ways you could create portfolios. You can create something fairly simple, which is what we are going to do, or you could get really complex and start adding in multi-levels and tons of different things. It's up to you how creative you want to get. But like I say, for this example, we're going to keep it fairly simple because the key aspect of this is more the shopping side of things, and you're just going to see the portfolio with some examples of work. Nothing more than that, really. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come into the pages, we're going to add a new page, and from there we're going to call this portfolio. We'll publish this, and then what we'll do is we'll open up Elementor like we've done in the past. Now with this open, first thing we're going to do is get rid of that ugly looking title at the top of the page, and then we're going to come into our widgets, and we're going to do a search for gallery. Now, you could use the portfolio if you wanted to create individual posts for each one of the gallery items or one of the portfolio items. Like I said, we're going to keep it fairly simple for this example. We're going to grab ourselves the gallery widget and drop that into our page. Now, from here, we can create a single gallery, or we can create multiple galleries. Now, if you wanted to create multiple galleries, you could organize different types of artwork into different galleries. So you may have something like watercolors, you may have sketches, oils, acrylics, whatever you wanted. All you need to do is choose the type at the top and just choose between single or multiple. Now we can use dynamic images if we wanted to, and if we were going to link this through to something like advanced custom fields, you could do that as well. But like I say, this is a fairly simple method. So we're going to keep it to one single gallery, and what we're going to do is we're just going to click to add the image we want into it. Now, just for this to keep it simple, I'm just going to choose the same images that we have inside the shop, just because it makes my life a little easier than uploading a ton more images. We'll say create a new gallery, we'll insert the gallery, and you can see that now loads the gallery in, at which point we can now go through and fine tune the layout. So you can see it says order by, and we've got default. We could randomize that if we wanted to. You can also set this to lazy load, so if you have a large gallery and you're going to have people sort of scroll down the page, then lazy load would probably be a very good option, because then it means the images are only going to be loaded in when they're required. If someone stays at the top of the page and doesn't scroll down, you're not loading tons of images in and having a slow sort of loading page. Then we've got the option for the layout. We've got grid, justified, or masonry. So if we just switch to justified, you can see that just puts them in currently as squares. We come into masonry. If you had different size images, different scale images, they would sort of show up at a different scale. So that's very good if you've got a layout of images that could be portrait, landscape, square, different aspect ratios. Masonry is probably going to be a good option for you. We're going to set this back to grid. We're going to set our columns to be 3 so we can have bigger representations of our images. We can adjust the spacing if we want to between each one of those images. We're going to set that to 20. And what we can do is then we can say, what do we want to do? We want to link it through to a media file, no link whatsoever, or a custom URL. So if we leave it set to media file, it should open it up inside a nice light box. So that's a nice way of viewing those images. But obviously, entirely up to you how you want to do it. Then we've got the aspect ratio. So where we're using a grid and it's resizing things, we can change that aspect ratio between quite a few different options. If we wanted them square, we could just say 1:1, and you can see that now pulls in the square version. If you wanted to create something like 16:9s, you could do that and set that. So obviously it comes down to the kind of images you want, how you want to lay your gallery out, all those kinds of good things. So we're going to set this to be 1:1 because these images are effectively square where we've loaded them in. Next up, you've got the image size. Now, currently this is set to medium, which is 300 pixels square. Now, obviously you can see they don't look the best quality, so we need to up that to another level. So we'll try this option, and that looks immediately better. Then you've got the overlay. So you can see when we take our mouse over, we get this nice overlay effect, which again, going back to the home page where we created those different call to action sections, this is a nice way of giving some visual representation when you mouse over them that something can happen. Now what you can do is you can set that background or you can turn it off. So if you disable it, then nothing will happen when you mouse over. Like say for me, I prefer to have that on there. But what you can also do is you can drop a title and or a description in. So you can see if we open that up, we can choose from any of the different data you can assign to any kind of image inside the media library that's part of WordPress. So we set the title, for example. If you assigned a title, when you mouse over, you'll see that title will come up on the screen. If you wanted something else like the alt tag, you could do that and you'll see the alt tag will pop up. Now for me, it's the same on each one. If you want a description, if you put a description in there, you could do that. So depending upon the type of gallery that you create, they could be very useful. For me, I'm going to disable those. I don't need them because I think visually it's more interesting to see the images and not worry about the names of them in this example. Then obviously you go to style and you can adjust things like the border colors, the overlay, the content. So you can adjust the size of the text, the style of the text, padding and all those kinds of things. So you can configure this any way you want to make it look as good as you want to. But with that being done, we'll hit update and we've now created a nice, clean and simple portfolio of images. The final thing we need to do is just add this into the menu. So I've already gone ahead into the menu section, choose portfolio, add that. We're going to just put that next to the shop and we'll save our menu. So we've now got our art site, we've got our portfolio, our shop. Next thing we need to do is add a couple more things in. We're going to add in a list of exhibitions so the artist can create their lists of exhibitions so people can see those, keep those up to date. We're also going to put in there the ability to add a list of the classes that they teach because they actually go out and teach, which I think is pretty cool. So we've got two more things to do. These are going to involve some extra tools that we haven't installed yet. And this is a purely optional step. If all you want to do is design something similar to this, if you want to, you can leave it at this point. However, if you want to see how to create something a little bit more customized, where we use advanced custom fields and so on, then stick around for the next two sections because I think these are going to open up some extra possibilities if you're creating a site like this. Best of all, they're pretty much free. Now to create these two new sections, we need a couple of extra plugins. Now we're going to be using free plugins for this, Advanced Custom Fields and Custom Post Type UI. Now if you are new to this and you've never seen or used these plugins before, just bear with me because we're going to have a very brief overview how you could create something similar to what I'm going to do now. But if you want to learn more about this, I've got tutorials that I'll put a link to in the description that'll take you through the very, very basics of both of those tools to get you comfortable to where you could create these kinds of things without any kind of problem. Now, Advanced Custom Fields has a Pro version, and if you want to use some of the Pro features, for example, you wanted to include a gallery, you'd need to have the Pro option. But we're not doing that, so the free one is perfectly fine. Now, first thing we're going to do is create a new custom post type. Now, what a custom post type is it allows us to create or group together a set of posts. So for example, we're going to create exhibitions. So we're going to create a custom post type called exhibitions. So to do that, we're going to come down until we get to CPT UI. And inside there, we're going to go add edit post type. Now from there, this might look a little daunting, but don't be put off. We only need to put a couple of little bits of information in there, maybe change a few settings. Other than that, we can leave most of it set to the default. So the slug is going to be exhibition. In other words, the name of the custom post type that we're going to create. Plural, exhibitions. And then singular, we'll just copy that and put the singular label. So there's the first part. We could, if we wanted to, leave it there. However, we're going to just drop down a little bit and take a look at some of the other options. Now, these additional labels are what you kind of see inside the left-hand side of the dashboard, things like add all pages, add new, those kinds of things. You can customize what you'll see under your custom post type if you want to. And all of these are fairly self-explanatory. Underneath will tell you exactly what they're talking about. But you can leave all those as they are. We're going to scroll right the way down until we get to the settings section. Now, most of these, again, you can leave as they are. What we are going to do, though, is we're just going to change a couple of things. First of all, we're going to say has archive. If we don't do that, we can't create the template inside Elementor Pro, and we can't create the listings for our exhibitions. So what we need to do is set that to be true. Then we're going to scroll down and you can see that we've got hierarchical. Now, hierarchical sounds very complicated and very grand, and all it really means is that you can have these with a top level, for example, exhibitions, then you could break those down to subsections and you could have local exhibitions, national exhibitions, those kinds of things. It's just grouping things together. For this example, you can leave that as it is. But if you wanted to set something up where you wanted to just categorize things in a little bit more logical fashion, you could set it up to be hierarchical if you wanted to. Okay, so if we scroll right the way down, menu position, you may want to set that to specify exactly where this sits inside the left-hand section, up to you. Show in menu just basically means it'll show up here where it says new, and you can have it inside there, new exhibition, for example. And then if you want to use a menu icon, you can use a menu icon. And you can see you're just using the dash icons. And if you click to open that up, you'll see the website with dash icons, and it's free to use. Or you can just choose your own image. I'm going to leave all those values as they are, not to worry about them. Then we've got supports. What kind of features does this particular custom post type support? The title is the name of the exhibition. The editor is basically where you can put the content that you want in the same way as you would with a normal post in WordPress. And the featured image, as its name suggests, is the featured image for that particular exhibition. So we're going to leave those three. We're not going to worry about any of the other ones. We'll leave all those as they are. And then that's pretty much it. That's all we need to do. Now, taxonomies, let me just quickly say what that is. If you create a taxonomy, you can assign it to your custom post type. Now, you may be thinking, what exactly is a taxonomy? Well, all it is a way of grouping your information together. So in other words, if you are used to working with posts in WordPress and you've seen tags and you've seen the categories, they are taxonomies. Tags and categories are just taxonomies. So you can create your own way of grouping your custom post type together by creating custom taxonomies. I cover that in this other video that I've talked about that will be linked in the description. So if you want to see more about how to use this in more in depth, please just check that out. It's going to get you up to speed double quick time. Okay, so we've got the basics, the things we need, and we can always come back and change anything if we've left it out. What we're going to do is say add post type, and there's our new post type called exhibitions, and you can see all exhibitions and add new. So now if we go into all exhibitions, nothing is currently listed. If we click on add new, all we currently have is the title, the sort of main area text, and we've got the featured image. We've got nothing else inside there. So it's not really that useful right now. We could just use a post type to do this. But if we come back out of this and we'll leave this page, we're going to come down to custom fields and we're going to come into add new. Now, custom fields is a great way of adding extra fields, and they could be things like your title and your featured image. They're just fields inside your post types. We can add extra ones and we can assign those to anything that we want. So we can now make our exhibitions just a little bit more feature rich. So we could do things like add dates in there, locations for addresses and so on, and then we can use those for other purposes should we want to. So let's just create exhibition details. Once we've done that, we're going to skip over the fields a moment, because the next thing, the most important thing, is the rules. And this is just to say where this particular group of fields, this custom group of fields, is going to be associated. So what we need to do is where it says post type is equal to post, which is just the default WordPress post, we're going to change that. And you can see inside there's our custom post type exhibition we've just created. I'm going to click on that. So now any fields that we create will only display inside the exhibition's custom post type. Simple as that, nothing more complicated. You can leave all the settings underneath as they are. You don't need to touch any of those. All we need to do now is add a couple of extra fields in. I'm going to keep this simple. We're going to just drop in just two fields, an address, and we're going to drop in a date. It's worth bearing in mind that these two new fields we're going to add will be added on to the existing fields, the title, the featured image, and so on, that's part of that custom post type. And you'll see what I mean once we add these. So we're going to say add field. So we're going to give this a field label. So we're going to call this exhibition address. We'll click in the field name, and you can see that automatically populates that based upon the field label, but you can change that if you want to. Just make sure that any spaces are separated by an underscore. Then we've got the field type, and this is where we have a ton of different types of fields we can use. For this, all we're going to do is leave it set as text. We're going to just drop a single address line in there. Do we want to make this required? Up to you. I would generally say yes, but you don't have to. Then you've got placeholder text and a prepend and append and a character limit. You don't need to touch any of those. You can leave those as they are. So we're going to close that down. Going to add another field in, and we're just going to call this exhibition date. Click underneath, and again, pre-fills that out. Field type, we're just going to come into there and we're going to scroll down until we find the option for date picker. And there we go. We could use date and time or just date picker. So we'll say date picker. And you can see then underneath it says, again, is this required? And what format do you want to output this in? So you can choose whatever format you want from there. So you can see day, month, year, year, month, day, blah, 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 all those kinds of things. And then the return format as well, how you want to display these. So we'll set that nice option there, and we'll do the same there. So it's a bit more readable for most of us. Other than that, we're done. So we've now created our custom fields. We've assigned them to the exhibition custom post type, hit publish. And now if we come back into exhibitions and come into add new, you'll see now have some extra fields inside there. So we've got some data we can drop in, and we've also got some placeholders to add that extra data in. So I'm going to quickly just add some basic text in there, a title, some filler text, some addresses, and some exhibition dates, just so we've got something in there to work with when we build the templates. So I created a couple of exhibitions now. Nothing special, just the text, location, and so on. So the next thing we need to do now is create a template to display these. We need an archive template, and we need to have a single post template, much the same as we did when we created and set those up as part of our shop. So what we're going to do, come into our templates and into our theme builder, and from there, we're going to come in first of all and say we want to create our archive. So we click on archive, and we say add new archive, and we're going to call this default exhibition archive. Click on create template, and then we've got all the normal tools. So we could, if we wanted to, use one of these predefined layouts, but as before, we're going to close that down. We're going to create our own. So you can see we've got archive posts, which we can pull in if we want to, or what I tend to prefer to do is just use the post widget, because that just gives us more control and a bit more sort of styling options. So we can say post, we'll drag and drop that over onto the page, and you see what will happen is it'll try to find just the normal default post, which we don't have any in there. But if we come to query, you can see source is set to posts. However, we can change that and choose exhibitions, which is our custom post type. Once we do that, you can see that now pulls in those exhibitions with the name, the date that was created at least, and also the information and a read more and so on. Now, if you want to keep things really super simple, this is probably the easiest way to create it. And I'm going to show you how to do this and create it using this method, but I'm also going to show you how we can use a free plugin and create a custom layout for these different loop items, these different exhibitions you can see on screen right now. So let me just quickly whiz through and show you how we can use this option. Obviously, those dates are the date that was posted, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we can do is, let's just change first of all the image that's going to be displayed. We can change the skin to something a little bit more modern. We can just come down there and we can just change any settings on here we want to just configure it. So we just don't want date and we don't want comments. I'm going to close those down. Read more is perfectly fine, or we could change that to view exhibition details, whatever you wanted to. We're not using any taxonomies, so we could basically get rid of that completely, and we can disable the avatar. So we've created a very simple layout, which we could use and it's perfectly fine. But it doesn't give any information like the date or the location of these particular exhibitions. So it's fairly limited. But like I say, if you want to go down this route, you could leave it at this point and just stick with what we've created. However, let's do something a little bit more unique. We'll publish that just so we can save this out and we can come back and just make a simple change a little later once we've created the design we want to use for our loop. Let's add a condition like we've done before. Now you can see this says all archives, and that's not what we want. If we set that now, every single archive in the entire site would take on this design. What we need to do is change that. We can come down, you can see we've got tons of different options and different hierarchy of different things like I've showed you with WooCommerce. What we want though is the exhibition archive. So we're going to click on exhibition archive, and that now will only apply this design to the exhibition archive. Save and close. We've now created that custom archive for this section. Like I say, if you want to leave it at this point and skip to the next section, there's details down below for the timestamp so you can jump through to those different sections. However, if you want to see a bit more of a customized way of doing this, stick with me. So let's just exit out of the dashboard right now, come back into our plugins and add new. And from there, we're going to choose to search for a plugin called Elementor Custom Skin. Now this is a completely free plugin. It does a simple job incredibly well, and I use this over and over again on lots of different tutorials. So this isn't your first tutorial that you've seen me creating this type of content. You've probably seen this before. And again, I've got dedicated tutorials on how you can use this. So if you want to check those out, link is in the description below. Okay, so now we've done that, we're going to come back into our templates, and we're going to come back into the theme builder, and we've got a new section called loop. Let's click to open that up, and let's say we're going to add a new loop in. So we're going to call this exhibition loop and create a template. Once we've done that, we take it into Elementor. We can close out of this. We don't need this preview window. So now we've got a page ready to start building our template. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do exactly that. We're going to create our template. So we can just choose any of the different items that we want. Now you can see this is being treated like a single post. So we've got the post title, post excerpt, post content, and so on, a featured image. We can just use those to build up how we want this to look. So let's just drag in this featured image. We'll drop that in there, and that's perfectly fine. Now you can see nothing is being displayed because it doesn't know what to display. So we can come down to the settings option, and under preview, we can click on there and expand this out and say we want to use the exhibition option. And we'll say apply and preview, and we should then see that we'll get a new item in there. Now, if you don't get an item in there, what you can do is come back into the preview settings. You can change that from all, and we'll just type in something like some of the words that's going to be used in there, and we'll say Cardiff Gallery and apply and preview. And there we go. There's the preview of our image. Now, because we're going to use these as part of the loop, we can make things a little easier to see how things are going to scale. We'll select the actual section itself. We're going to come over then to the content width, and we're going to adjust this to be, we're going to go for something like 500, somewhere around there. There we go. So this means now we're going to just get a better idea of what this would look like on the page, and we can adjust that at any point we want to. So our featured image is in there. That's perfectly fine. Come back to our widgets, and we can just pull in our post title, which will be the Cardiff Gallery. We can then set the HTML tag. We'll set that to something like H3. We can style that if we want to as well. So obviously it's a little large for what we want on there, but I'm using H3 because I think it's an important piece of information on the page. So we'll adjust that to be something just a little smaller, maybe something like 20, somewhere around there. Make it a little more punchy. There we go. You can style this any way you want. You can do what you want with it. But now what we can do is we can come in and we can add in some custom information. So let's just say we want to drag and drop the text editor in there. And from there, we're going to come and choose our dynamic tags, this little symbol in the top right-hand corner that you'll see in tons and tons of different sections and widgets inside Elementor Pro. Now, this is a Pro-only feature. You won't see this in Elementor Free. We can click on there, and we now have a ton of information we can pull in. We're going to choose the post summary. Now, this is a feature that's added as part of Elementor Custom Skin. And this allows us to do pretty much what you can do when you create a normal post layout like we saw in the first part of this section. It will just pull in a brief snip down version of the post content. And this is doing the same thing. We can come into style if we want to and style everything about that. So we can say, well, that's looking okay, but what I want to do is just tighten up the typography a little bit, the line height just a little bit tighter because it's going to be a smaller section. There we go, something like that. Okay, so we could leave it at this point if we want to, but then we've done nothing more than just copy what was on the other section. But this is where the beauty of using that dynamic data comes in. I'm going to come back out. We're going to choose text editor again. We're going to drop this just above the content that we've got, the little sort of snippet. I'm going to choose dynamic tags again. I'm going to scroll right the way down until we see ACF field. I'm going to click on ACF field. I'm going to click to open that up. And then we've got the option for the key. The key is just basically the name of the meta field we want to reference. Click on that. We've got exhibition address and exhibition details. Let's click on exhibition address. That will pull up the address inside there for us. And what we can do now is we can just come into the advanced section and we can just say location. And then we'll have location placed in front of it and the actual location for the exhibition. We can even use some HTML coding if we wanted to. So we want to make that bold so it stands out a little bit. We'll just drop in strong. Wait for that to refresh, and there you go. And you can style that now. So obviously we want to make that just a little bit smaller. We might want to make it darker. So let's just say we're going to set that to something like 12. We're going to set it to be a little darker, like 600. There we go. And we can adjust the line height if we want to. And you can fine tune the spacing on this kind of thing, just using padding and margins and so on. And then finally, what we can do is we can do the same thing again. So let's just duplicate that to make our lives a little easier. So we'll just duplicate that section. What we're going to do now is click on that, come back out to the ACF field, the little wrench in the corner, change that to exhibition date. And there we can change the label before that, and we can just say date. And we've now created a custom loop item. What we're going to do finally is just select this, and we're just going to make it so it'll stand out a little bit. So we're going to come into style, into border. We're going to set a solid border. We're going to set this to be pretty light, somewhere like that. And we're going to set it to be 1 pixel. And if you want to put a border radius and all those kinds of good things, you can do all that. So we'll hit publish. We don't need to set a condition, but if you want to, you can add a condition and you can say where you want to use this. So you may set up a different sort of style for this particular loop item to only be displayed in one particular section. Well, you could do that if you wanted to. For now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to say save and close. Now, once you've done that, we can just come back out of here, exit to our dashboard and go back to our theme builder. And from there, we're going to find our default exhibition archive and edit that with Elementor. Once that's done, you can see we've still got what we originally set up, and we're going to use that anyway. So we're going to click to edit this post section. We're going to come to the skin where it says cards. We're going to click on there and we're going to say custom, which is a new option. Now we've got Elementor custom skin installed. Click on that. You can see now a ton of new options open up. The first thing, the only thing we really need to set is select a default template. So I'm going to click on there and there's our exhibition loop. I'm going to click on that and we've now created our custom loop, including our location, the date and everything else that we want. Now, there is a pro version of Elementor Custom Skin, and I'll drop a link in the description for that. So if you want to check it out, you want to use more of these options like masonry and same height and sliders and so on, you can check that out. It's a pretty cool plugin. It's not expensive, and it's one of those plugins that I think is definitely worth its weight in gold if you're creating this kind of thing and you want those extra features. Now, the beauty of this is it's still fully editable. We can come in and edit these without any problem. So let's just update this. We've created it, we've set everything up, but the problem we have is we've got nothing to click on to go and take a look at the actual exhibition itself. So to rectify that, we're going to come back out of this, exit to our dashboard, go back to our theme builder, back into the loop. We're going to edit that exhibition loop item, and from there we can just choose the featured image. We're going to set the link to be custom URL. And because this link is going to change with every single item, we need to click on the little dynamic tags option. Click on there and you can see we've got post custom field, post URL and so on. So we're going to say post URL, so that'll take us over to the actual URL for this specific custom post type. Click on that. That's done. Update that, save and close. We've now updated that. So now let's test this out. Let's see it all working. Now come back out of this, exit to our dashboard. And from there, we're going to just go into our navigation. So we're going to go to appearance, into menus, and we're going to add in a new section. So you see at the moment, we don't have any way of referencing the archive. So it's pretty easy to do. We've called the custom post type exhibitions. So that's basically the URL we're going to use. We're going to create a custom link. And from there, we're just going to do a /exhibitions/. Then we're going to put the text in, exhibitions, add that to our menu and just position that next to the portfolio. Hit save menu. And now we're ready to go and take a look. So let's just open our site up. Let's just visit our site. There's our exhibitions. Going to click on that. And there's our custom exhibitions. Now, if we click on one of these, we're going to go through to the default page. So we're going to click and we've got a rubbish looking page that doesn't even include most of the information. So we need to create that custom single post. So a custom single template, I should say. Let's close this down, go back to our site, come back into our templates, back into our theme builder, and this time we're going to just choose to create a single. Add a new single, and we're going to call this exhibition, if I could type today, single post. Okay, change that to be exhibition, so single, exhibition, exhibition, single post for the name. Create our template, and now we can choose to create it from scratch, or if we created previous templates, we could use those. However, we've got nothing to choose from, so we're going to close that down. And now we have on the left-hand side all different widgets that are associated with creating a single post template. So the thing like the post title, post excerpt, featured image, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly put together something really, really simple. But it's up to you how you want to implement these features, because it's more about the skills we're covering than it is about the design aspect. So what I'll do is keep it really simple. We're going to create a simple 2-column section. And from there, we're going to come back to our widgets. We're going to grab ourselves the featured image, drop that into the left-hand side. We'll just position that a little smaller, about 40%. And what we're going to do is, the image looks pretty good in there. We could set a link to that if we wanted to. If you could link to the media file. So we could click and open it up and see a nice lightbox effect. We say yes to the lightbox. Come back out of this, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab the post title and drop that to the left hand side. We'll change that to be H3. Come back over. We're going to grab our post content, drop that underneath. There we go. There's our post content. Come back to our widgets, and what we're going to do is we're going to just create a another set of ACF fields, some custom fields that show the date and the location. So again, we're going to do the same things we did before. We're going to grab that text editor, drop that over there, click on the dynamic tags, scroll down until we get the ACF fields, click on the little wrench icon, click to open up the address, and then at the beginning of that, we'll just put location. Like I say, you can style this any way you want. We'll put colon and space in there, and we'll just duplicate that now for the date, and we'll just make those edits like we did the last time. So exhibition date, expand that out, and we'll just change that to date. So we created that custom setup for this now as well. Now, like I say, get as creative as you want to with something like this. Let's just select this, come back in and give it a bit of space at the top. So we put 50 at the top, 50 at the bottom, and click on publish. Now, we're taken through to those conditions again, and you can see because we've set this up and we've chosen exhibitions to be the custom post that we're going to be, or the post template that we're going to be creating, you can see it pulls up include exhibitions all. So all of our exhibitions on a single post will be displayed using this. That's perfectly fine. So we're going to say save and close. We've now done that. So we're going to come back to our site, come back out and come back to our home page, jump into our exhibition section. And from there, we're going to open up the Cardiff gallery. Then you can see there's our custom post template, all laid up nice and neat. Click, we get that nice large version of the image. So now with a little bit of time and effort, you could tidy that up to get it to look absolutely amazing. But hopefully what you've seen is these are the key features and these are the key tools you need to be able to create something a little more unique. We're now going to kind of go through to the next stage, which is all about the classes. Now, this is going to be done in a very, very similar fashion. So stick with me. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Now, with our classes section, we're going to take what we learned in the previous section about exhibitions and we're going to expand upon that with some extra little things. So I'm going to go through quite quickly what we've covered in the first section and just take our time and explain what I'm doing with some of the extras. So the first thing we need to do is come to our custom post type. We're going to add our new custom post type in like we did before. This time we're going to call this classes. Then we've got the plural label, so we're going to put classes and the singular class. Scroll right the way down. We're going to just come down and say we want to make sure that we've got has hierarchy is set to true, and we want to make sure that this is also set to hierarchical, set to true, and one other thing we need to make sure that it is all done, has archive is true as well. Okay, so most of those things are set up. We're not going to worry about menu positions and so on. We're going to leave the title, editor, and featured image like we did the last time. And other than that, we're going to just say add post type. So nothing different to what we did the first time. But we want to organize our classes now based upon their level. So beginners, intermediate, and advanced. It makes a little bit more sense then because people can sort of like take a look at the level. To do that, we're going to come in and create a taxonomy. Now, if you remember back to the last section, I just said taxonomies are a way of grouping things together, like categories and tags and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this level or difficulty. Actually, let's call it difficulty. There we go. And we'll just copy that and we'll just set that for the plural label. So we'll paste that in there, put a capital in, and do the same then below. Now you'll see this is very similar to what we did when we created our custom post type. We've got a couple of differences and I'll go through those now. Attached to post type. In other words, where is difficulty going to be associated? Now, because we want this to only be associated with the classes, we're just going to click on classes. Again, you've got all those labels if you want to change those. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you can see we've got a lot of the same things again. So we're going to set this to be hierarchical. And we're going to come down and just make sure everything else is right. So we're going to say show in admin column because it makes it easier to see what level the class is inside the admin column. And you'll see that shortly. And we're going to say show in bulk and quick edit, which just means that instead, if we wanted to change the level of a class, we could easily just come in and just change that from the quick edit inside the listing for all of the different classes. With that being done, we're going to say add taxonomy, and that's now our taxonomy created. So if we look on the left-hand side, we've got classes, and we have the section called difficulty, whereas if we look under exhibitions, because we have no taxonomies associated with that, we only have all exhibitions and add new. If we come into classes and we say all classes, you can see we have title, which is the name of the class, the difficulty, and the date that we added it. So difficulty has been added in. So let's just create a class. Let's take a look inside this. We add new, And you can see, like before, we've just got the class name, we've got the featured image and the class details, nothing more. So we need to add a couple of custom fields into this. So come out to custom fields, add new, and what we're going to do is we're going to put in class info. Set this now, post type is equal to class. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in some extra fields. So we're just going to put in there, the field label is just going to be class location. And we'll set that. Text is perfectly fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add another one in, which will be start date. Set that this time to be the date picker again. And we're going to do the same as we did before. Set both formats for both the return and the display format. And finally, we're going to add in another one that's just start time. So people can see exactly what time the class is going to start. I'm going to scroll down until we find the option for time picker. Click on there, and then we can choose the time that we want to work with. So we're going to put the 24-hour clock in for both of those. It makes a little bit more sense. Okay, we'll hit publish on there, and we've pretty much done everything we need. So now if we come back to our classes and add new, we've got all the same information before. We've got the class location, start date, and start time. Okay, so I'm going to do the same as I did last time. I'm going to add a couple of classes in, and then we're going to come back and take a look at creating that archive and the custom post layouts and so on. Now, because we've added those extra features in, let me just quickly show you how they show up inside here. You can see because we created a custom taxonomy, we now have a new section under document called difficulty. Click to expand that out. Currently, there's no difficulty set up, so we can add a new one in. We're going to call this beginners. Add new difficulty, and you see now there's beginners all set up. Because we set it as hierarchical, we can now create that hierarchy we wanted to. We could have beginners and we could have different sections inside there. We could have intermediate and different sections inside there. But there's another reason why I like setting it as hierarchical, even if I only want to have beginners, intermediate, and advanced, for example. And that's because I find it a little bit more user-friendly. Because when you set it to hierarchical, it'll show you the little checkboxes like you can see now for beginners. However, if you don't set that, it doesn't show anything other than an empty box where you've got to start typing. And I find that a little bit not user-friendly, should we say. So I just set it to hierarchical just specifically for that, even if I don't want a hierarchical structure. Okay, so class location, we're just going to put this, I'm going to worry about putting a full address in there. We'll just put Cardiff CF11. Start date, we can click on there and you can see that we're going to set this to be Saturday the 30th. We scroll down, we got start time, and we can set our start time in there. So unfortunately you can't see it very well on here because it's scrolling down below the screen. So there's our start time, date, and so on. So we'll just hit publish on there and publish, and we've now created our first class. Now I'm going to quickly go through and set up a couple more classes so we've got those to work with. So we now have 3 different classes, all set to different levels. And as you can see, the levels are now listed on the middle section inside this area. Okay, so we now need to just quickly go through and do like we did the last time, which is create both the archive page and the single page, and also the template that we want to use for this individual loop item. So I'm not going to spend too much time doing those. I'm going to quickly run through them just to cover off we need to do those things. So let's just come back into a theme builder, into our loop section. We're going to add a new loop in. We're going to call this default classes loop. Create our template, and we're going to do the same as we did before. Close this down. We're going to set this to be about 400 pixels wide. So let's just set that. Choose this. Let's make it 500 just so it's easier. Okay. And we're going to just drop in the featured image. We'll drop that inside there. We'll do like we did the last time. We'll center this. We'll set the link to be a custom URL, and we'll choose the dynamic tag and say post URL. So you can see once you kind of got used to doing this kind of thing, it really is just repeating the same things over and over again. Let's choose our preview settings. We're going to say this is going to be the classes, and we're just going to choose what we got, the life drawing one. That'll do. That's life drawing. Apply and preview. So we've got some data in there. Now let's just drop in our post title. Set that to be H3. We'll make it a little smaller. So what we'll do is just set that. Now I can't remember exactly what I set these to, but you kind of get the idea with it. It's not that important right now. It's more like I say, with any of these things, it's all about the techniques that you're learning and not necessarily just following along with what I do. Once you understand the techniques, you can kind of get as creative as you want and go off as far as you want, really getting stuck in and creating truly unique looking sites. So I'm going to quickly go through this. I'm going to speed this section up and then we'll move on. So that's created. We're going to jump over to the theme builder again. We're going to just come into our archive section, add new, call this default classes archive, create our template. And like we did the last time, we're going to close this down. We're simply going to come over and do a search for posts. And we're going to drag our posts option in there, make a bit of space at the top and bottom. So we're just going to set that to 50 and 50. And then what we're going to do is select, and we're going to come in and change this to custom. Change this now to our default classes loop. Scroll down, and we're just going to just set the query on there. Change that from posts, and we're going to just choose classes from that section. And as you can see, there's our classes. Now, this is one of the problems you have at the moment, is that because we have different scale images, then you're going to see that you're going to have this little bit of a discrepancy between them. You can easily rectify that by coming to the layout section if you're using the Pro version, and then just set it to be the same height. You could do this various different methods, but generally I would say you're probably going to put the same scale images in. And if you're not, it would make sense to do that just for the continuity of your design. But you can see this is very, very simple how to set this up. We'll hit publish on this, add our conditioning, change it from all archives. We're going to come down to classes archive, click on there. I'm going to say save and close. And we've done that side of things. Now with those basics in place, we can come back out of here, and the last thing we need to do is set up that final template, come back into a theme builder, into single, and from there we're going to just create our new single template. So we're going to say add new, select this, and we're going to choose class, and we're going to call this default class single. Create our template. Close this down, and again I'm just going to go through and speed through this. There's a couple of things I might want to show you as part of this that'll show you how to do a couple of bits and pieces, but I'm going to speed through most of it just to save time. Okay, you'll probably notice there's something missing, and that's where we set things up to show the difficulty level. We haven't listed that. Well, that's very easy to do. We're going to come down to is choose this option on the left hand side. We're going to grab the post info. I'm going to drop that underneath the title. Now see, by default that drags in the normal metadata like the author and date and so on. We're going to get rid of those first couple. We're going to change this comment section. We're going to come down and choose terms, and from there you can choose a taxonomy. So if you remember, the difficulty was just basically set up as a taxonomy. So we can come down, choose difficulty. That now shows that as being advanced. And what we can do is we can just say class difficulty and a colon. And then we can just say we don't want to link that. And we're going to get rid of the icon inside there. And then what we can do is we can just come in and style everything the way that we want it to. We can drop in a divider if we want to, all kinds of cool things. But we've now created the details for this specific class, including the difficulty level, which is that custom taxonomy that we set up and associated with our custom classes post type. Now, as with the previous section, there's still plenty more you could do to fine tune and refine this design to make sure it sits perfectly inside the rest of the overall design setup. Before we go through and finish this off, I'm just going to quickly go through now and show you how we set up and publish this, and then also linking this into our navigation structure, and then we've pretty much created the entire site. So let's just publish this. As again, you can see classes and all, which is perfectly fine. It's intelligent enough to know that we're associating it to those particular custom post type. However, like I say, if you want to, you can change that if you need to. Save and close, we've done that side of things. So now we're going to come back out of this, just go back into our appearance, into our menus, and like we did the last time, we're going to come down and create a custom link. And from there, we're going to create our custom link by putting in classes with my misspelling and /, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll actually spell this right. There we go. Add that to our menu, drag that next to our portfolio, save that, come back into our site and refresh. And there's our new section. Then just simply click on classes, and that'll take us through to our listing of all our classes. Click and take a look at our acrylics class, and you can see difficulty, intermediate, and all the details. So that's how we can create all these custom pages, these custom sections, custom post types, all those kinds of cool things, and create an artist-based website. Is it finished? No, there's still plenty more we could do to this. Like I say, it just takes a little bit of refining and adding some extra things in there just to get it to be in perfect the way that you want it to be. But you've seen the key skills now to be able to create a site very similar to this in any kind of topic that you want. Like I keep saying, the core skills are the important thing. The implementation is entirely up to you. So now that you've seen a lot of the key techniques, the tools, and the way that I would tend to work with the client on their project, this should give you all the key skills you need to start working on your own projects and with your own clients. Hopefully you've seen some really useful things inside this video, and as always, I'd love to get your feedback in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of the video, anything you think you'd like to see expanded upon, and if you created content using this video, drop some links in the comment section so I can check those out. As always, all of the applicable links are in the description below, so you can check those out. Some are affiliate links, and if you use those, cost you no more money, but does help support the channel moving forward. As always, my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.